Thank you very much. A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the three key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime: Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. Everybody heard those names for years as they built this horribly destructive enterprise. Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier. For 40 years, Iran has been saying death to America, death to Israel. They have been killing our people, blowing off their arms, blowing off their legs with roadside bombs. That was their specialty. We lost over 1,000 people, and hundreds of thousands throughout the Middle East and around the world have died as a direct result of their hate. In particular, so many were killed by their general, Qasem Soleimani. I decided a long time ago that I would not let this happen. It will not continue. I want to thank and congratulate Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. We worked as a team like perhaps no team has ever worked before. And we've gone a long way to erasing this horrible threat to Israel. I want to thank the Israeli military for the wonderful job they've done. And most importantly, I want to congratulate the great American patriots who flew those magnificent machines tonight, and all of the United States military on an operation the likes of which the world has not seen in many, many decades. Hopefully, we will no longer need their services in this capacity. I hope that's so. I also want to congratulate the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Raising-Kane, spectacular general, and all of the brilliant military minds involved in this attack. With all of that being said, this cannot continue. There will be either peace or there will be tragedy for Iran far greater than we have witnessed over the last 8 days. Remember, there are many targets left. Tonight's was the most difficult of them all, by far, and perhaps the most lethal. But if peace does not come quickly, we will go after those other targets with precision, speed, and skill. Most of them can be taken out in a matter of minutes. There's no military in the world that could have done what we did tonight, not even close. There has never been a military that could do what took place just a little while ago. Tomorrow, General Kane, Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth will have a press conference at 8 a.m. at the Pentagon. And I want to just thank everybody, and in particular, God. I want to just say, we love you, God, and we love our great military. Protect them. God bless the Middle East. God bless Israel, and God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Congratulations, President Trump. Your bold decision to target Iran's nuclear facilities with the awesome and righteous might of the United States will change history. In Operation Rising Lion, Israel has done truly amazing things. But in tonight's action against Iran's nuclear facilities, America has been truly unsurpassed. It has done what no other country on earth could do. History will record that President Trump acted to deny the world's most dangerous regime the world's most dangerous weapons. His leadership today has created a pivot of history that can help lead the Middle East and beyond to a future of prosperity and peace. President Trump and I often say, peace through strength. First comes strength, then comes peace. And tonight, President Trump and the United States acted with a lot of strength. President Trump, I thank you. The people of Israel thank you. The forces of civilization thank you. God bless America. God bless Israel. and may God bless our unshakable alliance, our unbreakable faith.
This is a statement from Donald Trump, quote, "We have completed our very successful attack on the 3 nuclear sites in Iran," etc. I agree. And I want to tell you something. Not only is this news that I've just heard this second alarming, that all of you have just heard, but it is so grossly unconstitutional. All of you know that the only entity that can take this country to war is the U.S. Congress. The President does not have the right . I was talking a moment ago about the fact that we are living in one of the most difficult moments in the modern history of this country, and Trump just made it that much more difficult. That's just another burden we're going to have to carry, and that's just another message we're going to have to get out all over this country. The American people do not want more war, more death. You know, it might be a good idea if we concentrated on the problems that exist in Oklahoma and Vermont, rather than getting involved in another war that the American people do not want. Let me just say this, that in the midst of all of what is going on, what is enormously important is that we do not give up on a vision of where this country must go. What the establishment wants you to believe is that you have no power, that you can't accomplish anything. They have it all, nothing you could do. And in this moment in American history, what we have got to do in Vermont and Oklahoma, in Texas, all over this country, is stand up and fight back and tell them this is our country. And I don't care if you are a progressive, a moderate, or a conservative. This country belongs to all of us, not just a handful of billionaires. And when we look out into the future, the kind of America we want, let's understand a few things. Number one, instead of giving tax breaks to billionaires, we should demand they start paying their fair share of taxes. No, we should not be throwing 16 million Americans off the health care they have. We should be doing what every other major country does, guarantee health care to all as a human right. This is not a radical idea. It exists in virtually every other wealthy country. The function of a rational healthcare system is not to make hundreds of billions for the drug companies and the insurance companies. It's to provide quality care to all. When we look into the future, we must demand that every worker in America earns a decent wage, raise the minimum wage to at least $17 an hour. We can create millions of good-paying jobs by union jobs, by building 5 million units of low-income and affordable housing. Not a radical idea to say that in a competitive global economy, every young person in this country, regardless of income, should have the right to get a higher education. We can and must make public colleges and universities, community colleges, trade schools, tuition free. And when we talk about freedom, and many of my colleagues talk about freedom every day, well, what freedom means, among other things, is that every woman in this country has a right to control her own body. And let me just say this. These are tough times, and you just heard 5 minutes ago, going to be even tougher. But in the midst of all of that, not just for our lives, but more importantly for our kids and our grandchildren, we have got to understand that despair is not an option. That's what they want us to believe. None of us have the privilege of hiding under the covers. The stakes are just too high. And I would like to remind all of you, a short history lesson, that throughout the history of this country, what we have always seen.
Thank you very much. A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the 3 key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime: Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. Everybody heard those names for years as they built this horribly destructive enterprise. Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Very good morning to you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so glad to be with you this morning. Actually, we invited you yesterday for a briefing on the latest developments on the ground and, of course, on diplomatic process. Because I came here from Geneva, where we had our first ministerial meeting of Iran E3, and then I had here yesterday lots of useful, important meetings with the foreign ministers of our region, and we discussed about different initiatives and ideas existed for a peaceful settlement of this question. But as all of you know, we suddenly faced with the aggression by American forces to our nuclear facilities. The Islamic Republic of Iran condemns in the strongest terms the United States' brutal military aggression against Iran's peaceful nuclear facilities. It is an outrageous, grave, and unprecedented violation of the fundamental principles of the Charter of the United Nations and international law. The warmongering and lawless administration in Washington is solely and fully responsible for the dangerous consequences and far-reaching implications of its act of aggression. The US military attack on the territorial integrity and national sovereignty of a UN member state carried out with genocidal Israeli regime, carried out in collusion with the genocidal Israeli regime, has once again revealed the extent of the United States' hostility towards the peace-seeking people of Iran, who will never compromise over their independence and sovereignty. The Islamic Republic of Iran continues to defend Iran's territory, sovereignty, security, and people by all means necessary against not just US military aggression, but also the reckless and unlawful actions of the Israeli regime. While President Trump was elected on a platform of putting an end to America's costly involvement of forever wars in our part of the world, he has betrayed not only Iran by abusing our commitment to diplomacy, but also deceived his own voters by submitting to the wishes of a wanted war criminal who has grown accustomed to exploiting the lives and wealth of American citizens to further the Israeli regime's objectives. The US act of aggression against Iran's peaceful nuclear facilities constitutes not only a flagrant breach of the UN Charter, especially the prohibition of the use of force under Article 2, Paragraph 4, and the obligation to respect the state's territorial integrity and sovereignty, but also a violation of UN Security Council Resolution 2231. It cannot be emphasized enough how much of a devastating blow that the US, a permanent member of the Security Council, has dealt to the global non-proliferation regime. The Islamic Republic of Iran reminds the United Nations, the Security Council, the UN Secretary General, the International Atomic Energy Agency, and other relevant international bodies of their duty and responsibility to take urgent and decisive action in response to this breach of international law. Silence in the face of such blatant aggression will plunge the world into an unprecedented level of danger and chaos. Humanity has come too far as a species to allow a lawless bully to take us back to the law of the jungle. The Islamic Republic of Iran calls on the Security Council to convene an emergency session to unequivocally condemn the criminal act of aggression by the United States against Iran and to hold the administration in Washington accountable for its violations of fundamental principles of United Nations Charter and of norms of international law. The responsibility of the IAEA and its Director General, who through evident bias in favor of warmongering parties paved the way for the current violence and bloodshed, is now clearer than ever. we call on the IAEA Board of Governors to immediately convene and carry out its legal responsibility in response to the dangerous US attack on Iran's peaceful nuclear facilities, all of which have been under the agency's full safeguards and monitoring. The world must not forget that it was the United States which, in the midst of a process to forge a diplomatic outcome, betrayed diplomacy by supporting the genocidal Israeli regime's launch of an illegal war of aggression on the Iranian nation. Not content with such malign actions, the United States itself has now also opted for a dangerous military operation and aggression against the people of Iran. In doing so, the US administration holds sole and full responsibility for the consequences of its actions, including the Islamic Republic of Iran's right to self-defense under the principles of the United Charter. In accordance with the UN Charter and its provisions allowing a legitimate response in self-defense, Iran reserves all options to defend its security interests and people. Thank you very much.
Sayın Bakan, Ahmet Gannam yine Televizyon Arabi. Müzakereleri hala kapı açık mı görüyorsunuz? Tahran'la görüşmüş müydünüz? Bugün nükleer tesislere vurulan nükleer tesislere ne kadar yüzde kaç bir zarar görmüştür? Arabuluculuk yapan bir ülke var mı? Görüştüğünüz bölgedeki ülkelerle, Türkiye, Suudi Arabistan, Katar gibi ülkelerle görüşüyor musunuz? Arabuluculuk devam ediyor mu, devam etmiyor mu? Nasıl görüyorsunuz bu süreci? Teşekkür ederiz.
Well, I have been in touch with Tehran, of course. I still do not have exact information about the level of damages, but I don't think it matters how much damages have been made. Attacking a nuclear facility by itself is an unforgivable violation of international law and should be condemned. Yesterday, as I said, I had discussion and talks with a number of foreign ministers of the region. Almost all of them are very much concerned and interested to play a role to end this aggression by Israel, of course. They were worried about a possible attack by the United States, but yesterday we were all talking about how to stop the Israeli aggression. Well, of course, the door for diplomacy should be always keep open, but this is not the case right now. My country has been under attack, under aggression, and we have to respond based on our legitimate right of self-defense. And we will do that as long as needed and necessary.
We'd now like to take a question from Al Jazeera.
Thank you very much, Minister. So you say that you need to respond right now, but we know that Iranians are known for their talents in negotiations in diplomacy and trade. What would be the conditions after responding for Iran to come back to a negotiation table, maybe with the US as well? And Turkey has been offering that Ankara can mediate for a trilateral between Turkey, US, and Iran. What would be your response to that? Because right now the US is technically involved in this conflict. Thank you.
Well, I think it is irrelevant to ask Iran to return to diplomacy, because we were in the middle of diplomacy. We were in the middle of talks with the United States when Israelis blew it up. And again, we were in the middle of talks and negotiation with Europeans, happened only 2 days ago in Geneva, when this time Americans decided to blow it up. So we were in diplomacy, but we were attacked militarily. So it was not Iran, but the US who betrayed diplomacy. They betrayed negotiations. When at the middle of negotiations with us, they gave green light to Israelis, if not instructed them to attack Iran's nuclear facilities. I think they have proved that they are not men of diplomacy, and they only understand the language of threat and force. And this is very unfortunate. The United States showed that they have no respect to United Nations Charter. They have no respect to international law. They have no respect to any international law regarding, managing the world and facing challenges of the world. There is no red line that they have not crossed. And the last one, and the most dangerous one, happened only last night, when they crossed a very big red line by attacking nuclear facilities. I don't know how much room is left for diplomacy. We are now calculating the damages. And as I said, the damages are not only for our nuclear facilities, the damages are for the United Nations Charter. It was not only Iran's facilities which was bombed, it was also the United Nations Charter. It was also Non-Proliferation Regime and NPT, which was bombed last night by Americans. And it was the rule of law and international law which was bombed. So now we have to see how much room is left for diplomacy, and we will decide.
I'd like to hand over to TRT World.
Mr. Minister, the US President Donald Trump warned that Iran must now make peace, otherwise the future attacks, he says, would be far greater and much easier. So how is Tehran responding to that threats from Washington? Thank you.
I think it's not up to Iran to respond to that. The whole international community should respond of such a clear threat against the United Nations Charter. Iran has done nothing wrong. We do not understand why Iran should be attacked for a false accusation that Iran is seeking nuclear weapons. It's now more than 20 years that we are trying to prove that our peaceful nuclear program is in fact peaceful and would remain peaceful. We negotiated for a long time with the so-called P5+1, and we came to a deal which the whole world celebrated as an achievement of diplomacy. And then it was the US who withdrew from that deal and reimposed their sanctions and restarted their threats. Again, we were negotiating with the same administration. Then all of a sudden they decided to attack us, first by Israelis, then by themselves. And now they are threatening us for more attacks. So it's not up to Iran, but it's up to international community to condemn this, to prevent this. Otherwise, there would be nothing left for the international law, for the security at the world level. The Security Council should play its role, should play its responsibility to condemn and prevent these kind of threats. We will certainly defend our interests. We will certainly defend our territorial integrity, our sovereignty, and our people. And I'm so glad that our people are now fully understand what injustice they are doing against the Iranian people. They are united and in solidarity with the government, and we stand firm against any aggression.
Next, CNN Türk.
Mr. Minister, how do you assess the West's stance on Israel massacres? No one seems to mention Israel's allegedly illegal nuclear weapons. The German Chancellor even said Israel is doing the dirty work for us. So what is your response? Thank you.
Well, what should I say? You said everything. That Iran is under attack by a nuclear-armed superpower and a nuclear-armed regime. And Iran, as you know, is a non-nuclear-armed country. That should be certainly condemned. If not, the whole non-proliferation regime would be undermined and would be defeated. Iran is a committed member of NPT. But NPT is not able to protect us. So why a country like Iran or other countries who are interested to have a peaceful nuclear energy should rely on NPT for their peaceful activities? It is very unfortunate that Israel is doing, as the German Chancellor called, a dirty job. And by the way, they supported that dirty job. It's a shame. They know that Israel is doing a dirty job and they support it, and they give it every right to do it, and they call it defending itself. It's really a shame. Pardon? Well, I think I'm not in a position to reveal what we are going to do in response to what Americans did last night. I just talked about the fact that NPT failed to protect Iran from and its peaceful nuclear program, and this is a serious challenge.
Next, we'd like to take a question from IRIB.
U.S. Central Command conducted a precision strike in the middle of the night against 3 nuclear facilities in Iran, Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan, in order to destroy or severely degrade Iran's nuclear program. And as the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs will demonstrate, it was an incredible and overwhelming success. The order we received from our Commander-in-Chief was focused, it was powerful, and it was clear. We devastated the Iranian nuclear program by but it's worth noting the operation did not target Iranian troops or the Iranian people.
For the entirety of his time in office, President Trump has consistently stated for over 10 years that Iran must not get a nuclear weapon. Full stop. Thanks to President Trump's bold and visionary leadership and his commitment to peace through strength, Iran's nuclear ambitions have been obliterated. Many presidents have dreamed of delivering the final blow to Iran's nuclear program, and none could until President Trump. The operation President Trump planned was bold and it was brilliant, showing the world that American deterrence is back. When this president speaks, the world should listen. And the U.S. military, we can back it up. The most powerful military the world has ever known. No other country on planet Earth could have conducted the operation that the chairman is going to outline this morning. Not even close. Just like Soleimani found out in the first term, Iran found out when POTUS says 60 days that he seeks peace and negotiation, he means 60 days of peace and negotiation. Otherwise, that nuclear program, that nuclear capability will not exist. He meant it. This is not the previous administration. The President Trump said no nukes. He seeks peace, and Iran should take that path. He sent out a truth last night saying this: any retaliation by Iran against the United States of America will be met with force far greater than what was witnessed tonight. Signed, the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. Iran would be smart to heed those words. He's said it before, and he means it. I want to give recognition to the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the Joint Staff, General Eric Kurilla at CENTCOM, who did a phenomenal job, he and his staff, all of CENTCOM. Policy, across the board, this was a joint effort, and across the Pentagon effort. I want to recognize the pilots who flew those bombers, who flew those fighters, who flew those refuelers, warriors. I want to recognize the sailors on those destroyers, in those subs, on those carriers, warriors, all of them. I want to recognize our soldiers doing air defense, base defense, QRF, warriors, all of them. Every American involved in this operation performed flawlessly. And I want to give recognition to our allies in Israel as well. This is a plan that took months and weeks of positioning and preparation so that we could be ready when the President of the United States called. It took a great deal of precision. It involved misdirection and the highest of operational security. Our B-2s went in and out of downtown Tehran, of these nuclear sites, in and out and back without the world knowing at all. In that way, it was historic. A strike that included the longest B-2 Spirit bomber mission since 2001 and the first operational employment of the MOP, a massive ordnance penetrator. The mission demonstrated to the world the level of joint and allied integration that speak to the strength of our alliance and our joint forces. As President Trump has stated, the United States does not seek war, but let me be clear. We will act swiftly and decisively when our people, our partners, or our interests are threatened. Iran should listen to the President of the United States and know that he means it, every word. I want to give congratulations to our Commander-in-Chief. It was an honor to watch him lead last night and throughout, and to our great American warriors on this successful operation. God bless our troops. God bless America. And we give glory to God for his providence and continue to ask for his protection. I turn it over now to the chairman for specifics.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thanks for recognizing all of our folks out there doing our nation's work, and nice to see everybody on this early Sunday morning. Last night on the President's orders, U.S. Central Command, under the command of General Eric Kurilla, executed Operation Midnight Hammer, a deliberate and precise strike against 3 Iranian nuclear facilities. This was a complex and high-risk mission carried out with exceptional skill and discipline by our joint force. I want to thank every service member, planner, operator that made this mission possible. Their actions reflect the highest standards of the United States Armed Forces. This operation was designed to severely degrade Iran's nuclear weapons infrastructure. It was planned and executed across multiple domains and theaters with coordination that reflects our ability to project power globally with speed and precision at the time and place of our nation's choosing. This was a highly classified mission with very few people in Washington knowing the timing or nature of this plan. I'll refer you to the graphic on the side as I walk you through some of the operational details. At midnight Friday into Saturday morning, a large B-2 strike package comprised of bombers launched from the continental United States. As part of the plan to maintain tactical surprise, part of the package proceeded to the west and into the Pacific as a decoy, a deception effort known only to an extremely small number of planners and key leaders here in Washington and in Tampa. The main strike package, comprised of 7 B-2 Spirit bombers, each with 2 crew members, proceeded quietly to the east with minimal communications. Throughout the 18-hour flight into the target area, the aircraft completed multiple in-flight refuelings. Once over land, the B-2s linked up with escort and support aircraft in a complex, tightly timed maneuver requiring exact synchronization across multiple platforms in a narrow piece of airspace, all done with minimal communications. This type of integration is exactly what our joint force does better than anyone else in the world. At approximately 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time last night, and just prior to the strike package entering Iran, a U.S. submarine in the Central Command area of responsibility launched more than 24 Tomahawk land attack cruise missiles against key surface infrastructure targets at Esfahan. As the Operation Midnight Hammer strike package entered Iranian airspace, the U.S. employed several deception tactics, including decoys, as the 4th and 5th generation aircraft pushed out in front of the strike package at high altitude and high speed, sweeping in front of the package for enemy fighters and surface-to-air missile threats. The strike package was supported by U.S. Strategic Command, U.S. Transportation Command, U.S. Cyber Command, U.S. Space Command, U.S. Space Force, and U.S. European Command. As the strike package approached Fordo and Natanz, the U.S. protection package employed high-speed suppression weapons to ensure safe passage of the strike package, with fighter assets employing preemptive suppressing fires against any potential Iranian surface-to-air threats. We are currently unaware of any shots fired at the U.S. strike package on the way in. At approximately 6:40 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 2:10 a.m. Iran time, the lead B-2 dropped 2 GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator weapons on the first of several aim points at Fordo. As the President stated last night, the remaining bombers then hit their targets as well, with a total of 14 MOPs dropped against 2 nuclear target areas. All 3 Iranian nuclear infrastructure targets were struck between 6:40 p.m. and 7:05 p.m. Eastern Time. Again, that's about 2:10 in the morning local time in Iran, with the Tomahawk missiles being the last to strike at Esfahan to ensure we retain the element of surprise throughout the operation. Following weapons release, the Midnight Hammer strike package exited Iranian airspace and the package began its return home. We are unaware of any shots fired at the package on the way out. Iran's fighters did not fly, and it appears that Iran's surface-to-air missile systems did not see us. Throughout the mission, we retained the element of surprise. In total, U.S. forces employed approximately 75 precision-guided weapons during this operation. This included, as the President stated last night, 14 30,000-pound GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrators, marking the first ever operational use of this weapon. I know that battle damage is of great interest. Final battle damage will take some time, but initial battle damage assessments indicate that all three sites sustained extremely severe damage and destruction. More than 125 U.S. aircraft participated in this mission, including B-2 stealth bombers, multiple flights of fourth and fifth generation fighters, dozens and dozens of air refueling tankers, a guided missile submarine, and a full array of intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance aircraft, as well as hundreds of maintenance and operational professionals. As the Secretary said, this was the largest B-2 operational strike in U.S. history and the second longest B-2 mission ever flown, exceeded only by those in the days following 9/11. Well prior to the strike, General Kurilla elevated force protection measures across the region, especially in Iraq, Syria, and the Gulf. Our forces remain on high alert and are fully postured to respond to any Iranian retaliation or proxy attacks, which would be an incredibly poor choice. We will defend ourselves. The safety of our service members and civilians remains our highest priority. This mission demonstrates the unmatched reach, coordination, and capability of the United States military. In just a matter of weeks, this went from strategic planning to global execution. This operation underscores the unmatched capabilities and global reach of the United States military. As the President clearly said last night, no other military in the world could have done this. I join the President and the Secretary in being incredibly proud of the air crews, naval forces, cyber operators, planners, and support teams, and commanders who made this mission possible. It is their skill, discipline, and teamwork that makes this operation possible. I am particularly proud of our discipline related to operational security, something that was of great concern to the President, the Secretary, General Kurilla, and me, and we will continue to focus on this. As we stand here this morning, many assets are still airborne, and we have hundreds deployed. I ask that we keep our warfighters on their way home and our deployed service member in our thoughts. Our joint force remains ready to defend the United States, our troops, and our interests in the region. Thank you very much.
We will take a few questions, Phil.
Me?
Yeah.
So, is regime change off the table, Mr. Secretary? And to the chairman, you said the battle damage assessment is still ongoing, but do you believe that some nuclear capability in Iran remains?
This mission was not and has not been about regime change. The President authorized a precision operation to neutralize the threats to our national interests posed by the Iranian nuclear program and the collective self-defense of our troops and our ally Israel.
Thanks for your question. I think BDA is still pending, and it would be way too early for me to comment on what may or may not still be there. But thanks for the question.
Green. No, behind you.
Excuse me, Mr. Secretary, can you tell me, was there a particular moment when the President decided to pull the trigger on this operation where he said, now, rather than being, something in the holster, now we're going to pull the trigger on it?
I would just say, having the opportunity to witness his leadership, he was fully committed to the peace process, wanted a negotiated outcome, gave Iran every single opportunity, and unfortunately was met by stonewalling, which is why he gave them plenty of time to continue to come to the table and give up enrichment, give up the nuclear program. But there was I won't say the particular moment, there was certainly a moment in time where he realized that it had to be a certain action taken in order to minimize the threat to us and our troops. Yeah.
General, you say that General Kurilla increased force protection in Iraq, Syria, and Gulf, in those areas. Were they given any advance warning the attacks were coming? And also, Mr. Secretary, when were congressional leaders notified? How long before the attacks took place?
Sure. To your first question, you know, the risk has clearly been rising over the last few weeks in the region. Based on that, and not a particular awareness of this operation, we've made smart decisions to minimize the risk to U.S. forces in the region.
So they were given no advance warning?
No, sir.
And congressional?
They were notified after the planes were safely out. Well, we complied with the notification requirements of the War Powers Act.
The attacks, they were notified?
They were immediately thereafter. Yes.
Thank you, Secretary. Two quick questions. Do you believe you completely destroyed Iranian nuclear program? And how about Iranian ballistic missiles? Your ally as Israel always saying that is biggest threat. And second question is very important. What will be your next step if Iran or militias under Iranian influence in the region attack U.S. interests or allies in the region?
And you can chime in on this too, Mr. Chairman. The battle damage assessment is ongoing, but our initial assessment, as the chairman said, is that all of our precision munitions struck where we wanted them to strike and had the desired effect. Which means especially in Fordo, which was the primary target here, we believe we achieved destruction of capabilities there. Ultimately, wherever it may be, whether it's in Iraq or Syria or bases in the Gulf, as the president said, it would be, as the chairman said, it would be a very bad idea for Iran or its proxies to attempt to attack American forces. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Regarding retaliations, Iran and North Korea are cooperating on nuclear and missile development. Do you think there is a possibility that Iran, North Korea, and the other forces, such as China, will join forces to retaliate against the United States?
Well, unfortunately, because of the policies under the previous administration, we drove those countries together. And ultimately, that creates a challenging environment. For this particular operation, the focus is on Iran and Iranian nuclear capabilities. That's our focus here, is to not just say that they can't have, but President Trump has said from over 20 years, frankly, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And ultimately, he decided this is the moment, given their stonewalling, when direct military action had to be taken to prevent that from happening. Yes.
Thank you very much. General Kane, I understand OPSEC, I respect OPSEC. Can you say at all what security procedures are being taken to protect U.S. troops in Iraq and elsewhere in the Middle East? And Secretary Hegseth, as a global war on terrorism veteran, what do you say to veterans who may be concerned the U.S. is getting into another open-ended war in the Middle East over weapons of mass destruction?
Thanks, sir, for the question. I won't comment on what force protection measures are being taken in the region. What I will say is we're being proactive and not reactive, and being very thoughtful about ensuring that we do all that we can to protect our forces out there.
And I would just say, as the president has directed and made clear, this is most certainly not open-ended. It doesn't mean it limits our ability to respond. We will respond if necessary. The most powerful military in the world is postured and prepared to defend our people. But what the president gave us, as I said, was a focused, powerful, and clear mission on the destruction of Iranian nuclear capabilities. Those were the targets. That's what was struck. That's what was overwhelming. That's what was overwhelming. That's what the Iranian regime needs to understand, as the president put out last night. He wants peace. There needs to be a negotiated settlement here. We ultimately demonstrated that Iran cannot have a nuclear capability. That is a very clear mission set on this operation. Yes, hold on. Yes, right there.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Question for the Secretary and the Chairman. How was this strike coordinated with the Israelis on a strategic level, militarily, and on a tactical level? Was there any direct Israeli military participation in this operation?
Well, I would say certainly Israel had an incredible military success, especially at the beginning and ongoing, in degrading Iranian capabilities, in degrading Iranian launchers, MRBMs. It's been incredible to watch what our ally Israel has been able to do. And there certainly have been conversations. I mean, General Kurilla at CENTCOM has worked closely in the defense of Israel for many years. And part of this operation was the defense of Israel and the ongoing defense of Israel. But as it pertains to this strike, this was U.S. operated and U.S. led.
We took advantage of some of the preparatory work that's been done over the past week and a half in terms of axis of approach. I won't get into the particulars, but as the Secretary said, it was a U.S. strike. We made sure we were not in the same piece of airspace and sky. Aside from that, that was the extent of it.
We'll take a couple more. Yeah, right there.
Question to the Secretary first. Are you concerned whatsoever now about the reaction from U.S. allies given the strike, particularly those in the Gulf? And to the Chairman, if I may, I understand you don't want to speak to specific assets and force protection measures, but do you anticipate at least having to bring in any further assets from other theaters to aid in force protection over the coming days?
We certainly understand the challenges of allies in the region, and we have been respectful and in working in collaboration with them as it pertains to basing and sensitivities there. Ultimately, they've got a lot of assets and people in those locations also where American troops are co-located. So that's a consideration of ours. We've been in close consultation with them, and we appreciate the support that we have got.
Thanks for the question on sort of the global picture. And as you know, that's one of my jobs, is to look globally at the entire range of challenges. We are always carefully considering our force posture around the world and then offering options to the Secretary and to the President. I won't comment on any future things, but the American people should know that we carefully consider those moves around the world and try to modulate as needed our force structure in the region.
Absolutely. Yeah, right here.
Thank you. What communications are being sent to the Iranians right now, and is there any possibility of diplomacy now or in the coming days?
I can only confirm that there are both public and private messages being directly delivered to the Iranians in multiple channels, giving them every opportunity to come to the table. They understand precisely what the American position is, precisely what steps they can take to allow for peace, and we hope they do so. Yes.
The president may not want an open-ended conflict. The Iranians may disagree. Are you prepared for a protracted war?
Well, anything can happen in conflict. We acknowledge that. But the scope of this was intentionally limited. That's the message that we're sending. With the capabilities of the American military nearly unlimited. So Iran, in that sense, has a choice. But we've made it very clear to them, this is nuclear sites, this is nuclear capabilities, this is the line that the president set, and we set that back. Now is the time to come forward for peace. But I think one of the takeaways from this as well is the unprecedented level of ongoing cooperation. I can't speak highly enough of the chairman and his staff and General Kurilla in CENTCOM, what they've done to look around the corner, to pre-position, to understand how an operation like this comes together. The scope and scale of what occurred last night would take the breath away of almost any American if you had an opportunity to watch it in real time. And I think Tehran is certainly calculating the reality that planes flew from the middle of America in Missouri overnight, completely undetected over 3 of their most highly sensitive sites, and we were able to destroy nuclear capabilities. And our boys in those bombers are on their way home right now. We believe that'll have a clear psychological impact on how they view the future, and we certainly hope they take the path of negotiated peace. But I could not be more proud of how this building operated, the precision, the sensitivity, and the professionalism of the troops involved in this effort. I will take one more. We'll take one more question. Yes, right there.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Concerning the justification for these strikes, in March, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence released their threat assessment, concluding, quote, Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear programs he suspended in 2003, unquote. So what new intelligence does the U.S. have since then that the Iranians have changed their position on nuclear weapons? And does this new intelligence come from U.S. sources and methods, or are we getting this information from other countries?
Well, I would just simply say that the president's made it very clear. He's looked at all of this, all of the intelligence, all of the information, and come to the conclusion that the Iranian nuclear program is a threat, and was willing to take this precision operation to neutralize that threat in order to advance American national interests, reduce the Iranian nuclear program, and obviously collective self-defense of ourselves and our allies. So he looked at all of it, understood the nature of the threat, and took bold action I think the American people would expect in a commander-in-chief. That's all we've got. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, do you have any of the WC-135s up to check the radioactive material in the atmosphere?
Very much. General Kane, I understand OPSEC, I respect OPSEC. Can you say at all what security procedures are being taken to protect U.S. troops in Iraq and elsewhere in the Middle East? And Secretary Hegseth, as a global war on terrorism veteran, what do you say to veterans who may be concerned the U.S. is getting into another open-ended war in the Middle East over weapons of mass destruction?
Thanks, sir, for the question. I won't comment on what force protection measures are being taken in the region. What I will say is we're being proactive and not reactive, and being very thoughtful about ensuring that we do all that we can to protect our forces out there.
And I would just say, as the president has directed and made clear, this is most certainly not open-ended. It doesn't mean it limits our ability to respond. We will respond if necessary. The most powerful military in the world is postured and prepared to defend our people. But what the president gave us, as I said, was a focused, powerful, and clear mission on the destruction of Iranian nuclear capabilities. Those were the targets. That's what was struck. That's what was overwhelming. That's what was overwhelming. That's what the Iranian regime needs to understand, as the president put out last night. He wants peace. There needs to be a negotiated settlement here. We ultimately demonstrated that Iran cannot have a nuclear capability. That is a very clear mission set on this operation.
Thank you very much.
We will take a few questions, Phil.
Me?
Yeah.
So, is regime change off the table, Mr. Secretary? And to the chairman, you said the battle damage assessment is still ongoing, but do you believe that some nuclear capability in Iran remains?
This mission was not and has not been about regime change. The president authorized a precision operation to neutralize the threats to our national interests posed by the Iranian nuclear program and the collective self-defense of our troops and our ally Israel.
Thanks for your question. I think BDA is still pending, and it would be way too early for me to comment on what may or may not still be there. But thanks for the question.
Tonight I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier. For 40 years, Iran has been saying death to America, death to Israel. They have been killing our people, blowing off their arms, blowing off their legs with roadside bombs. That was their specialty. We lost over 1,000 people, and hundreds of thousands throughout the Middle East and around the world have died as a direct result of their hate. In particular, so many were killed by their general, Qasem Soleimani. I decided a long time ago that I would not let this happen. It will not continue. I want to thank and congratulate Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu We worked as a team like perhaps no team has ever worked before, and we've gone a long way to erasing this horrible threat to Israel. I want to thank the Israeli military for the wonderful job they've done. And most importantly, I want to congratulate the great American patriots who flew those magnificent machines tonight, and all of the United States military on an operation the likes of which the world has not seen in many, many decades. Hopefully, we will no longer need their services in this capacity. I hope that.
Mr. Minister, the U.S. President Donald Trump warned that Iran must now make peace, otherwise the future attacks, he says, would be far greater and much easier. So how is Tehran responding to death threats from Washington? Thank you.
I think it's not up to Iran to respond to that. The whole international community should respond of such a clear threat against the United Nations Charter. Iran has done nothing wrong. We do not understand why Iran should be attacked for a false accusation that Iran is seeking nuclear weapons. It's now more than 20 years that we are trying to prove that our peaceful nuclear program is in fact peaceful and would remain peaceful. We negotiated for a long time with the so-called P5+1, and we came to a deal which the whole world celebrated as an achievement of diplomacy. And then it was the US who withdrew from that deal and reimposed their sanctions and restarted their threats. Again, we were negotiating with the same administration. Then all of a sudden they decided to attack us, first by Israelis, then by themselves. And now they are threatening us for more attacks. So it's not up to Iran, but it's up to international community to condemn this, to prevent this. Otherwise, there would be nothing left for the international law, for the security at the world level. The Security Council should play its role, should play its responsibility to condemn and prevent these kind of threats. We will certainly defend our interest. We will certainly defend our territorial integrity, our sovereignty, and our people. And I'm so glad that our people are now fully understand what injustice they are doing against the Iranian people. They are united and in solidarity with the government, and we stand firm against any aggression.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thanks for recognizing all of our folks out there doing our nation's work, and nice to see everybody on this early Sunday morning. Last night, on the President's orders, U.S. Central Command, under the command of General Eric Kurilla, executed Operation Midnight Hammer, a deliberate and precise strike against 3 Iranian nuclear facilities. This was a complex and high-risk mission carried out with exceptional skill and discipline by our joint force. I want to thank every service member, planner, operator that made this mission possible. Their actions reflect the highest standards of the United States Armed Forces. This operation was designed to severely degrade Iran's nuclear weapons infrastructure. It was planned and executed across multiple domains and theaters with coordination that reflects our ability to project power globally with speed and precision at the time and place of our nation's choosing. This was a highly classified mission with very few people in Washington knowing the timing or nature of this plan. I'll refer you to the graphic on the side as I walk you through some of the operational details. At midnight Friday into Saturday morning, a large B-2 strike package comprised of bombers launched from the continental United States. As part of the plan to maintain tactical surprise, part of the package proceeded to the west and into the Pacific as a decoy, a deception effort known only to an extremely small number of planners and key leaders here in Washington and in Tampa. The main strike package, comprised of 7 B-2 Spirit bombers, each with 2 crew members, proceeded quietly to the east with minimal communications. Throughout the 18-hour flight into the target area, the aircraft completed multiple in-flight refuelings. Once over land, the B-2s linked up with escort and support aircraft in a complex, tightly timed maneuver requiring exact synchronization across multiple platforms in a narrow piece of airspace, all done with minimal communications. This type of integration is exactly what our joint force does better than anyone else in the world. At approximately 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time last night, and just prior to the strike package entering Iran, a U.S. submarine in the Central Command Area of Responsibility launched more than 24 Tomahawk land attack cruise missiles against key surface infrastructure targets at Esfahan. As the Operation Midnight Hammer strike package entered Iranian airspace, the U.S. employed several deception tactics, including decoys, as the 4th and 5th generation aircraft pushed out in front of the strike package at high altitude and high speed, sweeping in front of the package for enemy fighters and surface-to-air missile threats. The strike package was supported by U.S. Strategic Command, U.S. Transportation Command, U.S. Cyber Command, U.S. Space Command, U.S. Space Force, and U.S. European Command. As the strike package approached Fordow and Natanz, the U.S. protection package employed high-speed suppression weapons to ensure safe passage of the strike package, with fighter assets employing preemptive suppressing fires against any potential Iranian surface-to-air threats. We are currently unaware of any shots fired at the U.S. strike package on the way in. At approximately 6:40 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 2:10 a.m. Iran time, the lead B-2 dropped 2 GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator weapons on the first of several aim points at Fordow. As the president stated last night, the remaining bombers then hit their targets as well, with a total of 14 MOPs dropped against 2 nuclear target areas. All 3 Iranian nuclear infrastructure targets were struck between 6:40 p.m. and 7:05 p.m. Eastern Time. Again, that's about 2:10 in the morning local time in Iran, with the Tomahawk missiles being the last to strike at Esfahan to ensure we retain the element of surprise throughout the operation. Following weapons release, the Midnight Hammer strike package exited Iranian airspace and the package began its return home. We are unaware of any shots fired at the package on the way out. Iran's fighters did not fly, and it appears that Iran's surface-to-air missile systems did not see us. Throughout the mission, we retained the element of surprise. In total, U.S. forces employed approximately 75 precision-guided weapons during this operation. This included, as the president stated last night, 14 30,000-pound GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrators, marking the first ever operational use of this weapon. I know that battle damage is of great interest. Final battle damage will take some time, but initial battle damage assessments indicate that all 3 sites sustained extremely severe damage and destruction. More than 125 U.S. aircraft participated in this mission, including B-2 stealth bombers, multiple flights of 4th and 5th generation fighters, dozens and dozens of air refueling tankers, a guided missile submarine, and a full array of intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance aircraft, as well as hundreds of maintenance and operational professionals. As the Secretary said, this was the largest B-2 operational strike in U.S. history and the second longest B-2 mission ever flown, exceeded only by those in the days following 9/11. Well prior to the strike, General Kurilla elevated force protection measures across the region, especially in Iraq, Syria, and the Gulf. Our forces remain on high alert and are fully postured to respond to any Iranian retaliation or proxy attacks, which would be an incredibly poor choice. We will defend ourselves. The safety of our service members and civilians remains our highest priority. This mission demonstrates the unmatched reach, coordination, and capability of the United States military. In just a matter of weeks, this went from strategic planning to global execution. This operation underscores the unmatched capabilities and global reach of the United States military. As the President clearly said last night, no other military in the world could have done this. I join the President and the Secretary in being incredibly proud of the air crews, naval forces, cyber operators, planners and support teams, and commanders who made this mission possible. It is their skill, discipline, and teamwork that makes this operation possible. I am particularly proud of our discipline related to operational security, something that was of great concern to the President, the Secretary, General Kurilla, and me, and we will continue to focus on this. As we stand here this morning, many assets are still airborne, and we have hundreds deployed. I ask that we keep our warfighters on their way home and our deployed service member in our thoughts. Our joint force remains ready to defend the United States, our troops, and our interests in the region.
So one thing ought to be made clear, because I've followed the American public debate intensely, and we made clear throughout that we are not dragging America into a war, and we are leaving it to the decision of the head of, the President of the United States and his team, because it had to do with America's national security interest, period. We are not intending, and we don't ask for America now to go to war because the Iranians are threatening Israel. The decision was taken because the Iranian nuclear program was a clear and present danger to the security interests of all the free world, especially the leader of the free world. And America, as the leader of the free world, was actually at risk from this program, and that is why it was the right step to do. As for how to exit from the war, that's now the moment where one thinks about diplomacy, but diplomacy has to be effective, because previous diplomacy failed because the Iranians kept on lying constantly. We tried to prove it. It was actually previous American leaders who exposed the fact that, Iran was trying to hide a lot of its clandestine military operations and missile development and nuclear program, and therefore diplomacy has to be nuts and bolts and very clear so that Iran cannot have nuclear weapons. It's not any of the official goals of this war, not at all. On the contrary, we leave it to the Iranian people, but it would be a very blessed major side effect, if you can call it, or outcome. After all, this regime is a very oppressive regime. It's a very dangerous regime. It spreads havoc and hate for decades, building terror machines and terror cells all over the world, operating through terror all over the world, not accommodating the real need of the universe, of the family of nations, to move on. And I truly believe, as somebody who believes that peace will come, that this is an opportunity now to move the Middle East in a trajectory of nations getting to know each other and moving towards peace together, including, by the way, between us and the Palestinians. So all I can say is that I know that there was a very close and intimate dialogue between the president and the prime minister. The president said it publicly overnight. I think it was a very important dialogue, and I congratulate both of them. I do not know the exact details, but all I know is that actually this cooperation can lead to further benefits, meaning we have to make sure that Iran cannot develop nuclear weapons and cannot develop missile programs that reaches London. And you ask yourself, why London? Or why a small tribe in Yemen? The Houthis, 50,000 people in all, have ballistic missiles and cruise missiles. And how can they block the main arteries of international trade? These are the questions of the day, and that's why this achievement is so substantial and so important. And I sincerely pray and hope that it will bring both a positive and peaceful development in the region and bring back our hostages who are still there in Gaza.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Regarding retaliations, Iran and North Korea are cooperating on nuclear and missile development. Do you think there is a possibility that Iran, North Korea, and the other forces, such as China, will join forces to retaliate against the United States?
Well, unfortunately, because of the policies under the previous administration, we drove those countries together, and ultimately that creates a challenging environment. For this particular operation, the focus is on Iran and Iranian nuclear capabilities. That's our focus here, is to not just say that they can't have, but President Trump has said from over 20 years, frankly, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And ultimately, he decided this is the moment, given their stonewalling, when direct military action had to be taken to prevent that from happening. Yes.
Thank you very much, Minister. So you say that you need to respond right now, but we know that Iranians are known for their talents in negotiations, in diplomacy and trade. What would be the conditions after responding for Iran to come back to a negotiation table, maybe with the US as well? And Turkey has been offering that Ankara can mediate for a trilateral between Turkey, US, and Iran. What would be your response to that? Because right now the US is technically involved in this conflict. Thank you.
Well, I think it is irrelevant to ask Iran to return to diplomacy, because we were in the middle of diplomacy. We were in the middle of talks with the United States when Israelis blew it up. And again, we were in the middle of talks and negotiation with Europeans, happened only 2 days ago in Geneva, when this time Americans decided to blow it up. So we were in diplomacy, but we were attacked militarily. So it was not Iran, but the US who betrayed diplomacy. They betrayed negotiations. When at the middle of negotiations with us, they gave green light to Israelis, if not instructed them to attack Iran's nuclear facilities. I think they have proved that they are not men of diplomacy, and they only understand the language of threat and force. And this is very unfortunate. The United States showed that they have no respect to United Nations Charter. They have no respect to international law. They have no respect to any international law regarding, managing the world and facing challenges of the world. There is no red line that they have not crossed. And the last one, and the most dangerous one, happened only last night, when they crossed a very big red line by attacking nuclear facilities. I don't know how much room is left for diplomacy. We are now calculating the damages. And as I said, the damages are not only for our nuclear facilities. The damages are for the United Nations Charter. It was not only Iran's facilities which was bombed, it was also the United Nations Charter. It was also non-proliferation regime and NPT, which was bombed last night by Americans. And it was the rule of law and international law which was bombed. So now we have to see how much room is left for diplomacy, and we will decide.
Thank you, President. I thank you for convening this emergency open meeting. I also thank Secretary General Guterres for his statement, and ASD Yenta and Director General Grossi for their briefings. Yesterday, the United States conducted strikes on 3 Iranian nuclear facilities in Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan. China strongly condemns the U.S. attacks on Iran and the bombing of nuclear facilities under the safeguards of the IAEA. The actions of the United States seriously violate the purposes and principles of the UN Charter and international law, as well as Iran's sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity. It has exacerbated tensions in the Middle East and dealt a heavy blow to the international nuclear non-proliferation regime. The international community must uphold justice and make concrete efforts to cool down the situation and restore peace and stability. In this connection, I wish to put forward 4 appeals. First, we call for an immediate ceasefire and ending the hostilities. In the context of the abrupt escalation of tensions in the Middle East, China is deeply concerned about the risk of the situation getting out of control. The parties to the conflict, Israel in particular, should reach an immediate ceasefire to prevent a spiraling escalation and to resolutely avoid the spillover of the war. The parties concerned should abide by international law, curb the impulse to use force, and avoid exacerbating conflicts and adding fuel to the fire. Second, we call for effective protection of civilians. The ultimate victims of all conflicts are the innocent people. China is deeply saddened by the large number of civilian casualties caused by the conflict. Civilians and civilian facilities must not become targets of military operations. And the bottom line of international humanitarian law must not be breached. Parties to the conflict should place the interests and well-being of the people of the countries in the region above everything else, and make every effort to avoid harm to innocent civilians and refrain from attacking civilian facilities. Third, we call for commitment to dialogue and negotiation. Peace in the Middle East cannot be achieved by the use of force. Dialogue and negotiation are the fundamental way out. At present, diplomatic means to address the Iranian nuclear issue haven't been exhausted, and there's still hope for a peaceful solution. Parties should stay firmly committed to the political settlement of the Iranian nuclear issue and work to bring it back onto the track of a political solution through dialogue and negotiation, with a view to reaching an agreement acceptable to all parties. Fourth, we call for swift actions by the Security Council. The Security Council has the primary responsibility for the maintenance of international peace and security, and cannot stand idly by in the face of a major crisis. Russia, China, and Pakistan have proposed a draft resolution calling for an immediate and unconditional ceasefire, the protection of civilians, respect for international law, and engaging in dialogue and negotiation. We hope that Council members can demonstrate their strong sense of responsibility by jointly supporting the draft resolution to enable the Security Council to fulfill its responsibilities for the maintenance of international peace and security. China stands ready to work with the international community to foster synergy, uphold justice, and make unremitting efforts to restore peace and stability in the Middle East. Thank you, President.
I thank the representative of China for his statement, and I now.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Secretary General Antonio Guterres, Assistant Secretary General Miroslav Jenša, and Director General Rafael Grossi for your continued attention on this urgent matter of international peace and security. Madam President, last evening, U.S. military strikes targeted nuclear facilities in Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan with the aim of dismantling Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and stopping the nuclear threat posed by the world's foremost state sponsor of terror. This operation sought to eliminate a long-standing but rapidly escalating source of global insecurity and to aid our ally Israel in our inherent right of collective self-defense, consistent with the UN Charter. For 40 years, the Iranian government has called for death to America and death to Israel, and posed a constant menace to the peace and security of its neighbors, the United States, and the entire world. Iran has attacked Israel with hundreds of ballistic missiles and through terrorist proxies. For decades, Iran has been responsible for misery and countless deaths across the Middle East. Iran's government and its proxies have also killed numerous Americans, including American service members in Iraq and Afghanistan. In recent weeks, Iranian officials have intensified their hostile bluster and rhetoric. Iran has long obfuscated its nuclear weapons program and stonewalled good faith efforts in recent negotiations. Madam President, the time finally came for the United States, in the defense of its ally and in the defense of our own citizens and interests, to act decisively. The Iranian regime cannot have a nuclear weapon. Let us be clear. Iran should not escalate. As President Trump said, any Iranian attack, direct or indirect, against Americans or American bases will be met with devastating retaliation. To fulfill its core mission of maintaining international peace and security, this Council must call upon the Iranian regime to end its 47-year effort to eradicate the State of Israel, to terminate its drive for nuclear weapons, to stop targeting American citizens and interests, and to negotiate peace in good faith for the prosperity and security of the Iranian people and all other states in the region. Madam President, a member state here today cast aspersions about hypocrisy and raised the forthcoming meeting on UN Security Council Resolution 2231. In that regard, I would point out that the recent IAEA report on verification and monitoring of Iran's noncompliance with obligatory nuclear safeguards shows clearly that Iran has been continuing to accelerate its nuclear activities without any credible civilian justification. We look forward to discussing the implications of this report and its broader implications on Tuesday, when the Secretariat briefs on the report on implementation of UNSCR 2231. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of the United States for her.
Thank you, Madam President. First, I would like to thank the Secretary General, ASG Yancha, Director General Grossi, for your remarks. Madam President, last night, history changed. The United States of America struck Iran's nuclear sites at Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan. The United States, the leader of the free world, removed the greatest existential threat facing the free world. Just like our Operation Rising Lion, this was not a war of choice. This action was a necessity. It was a righteous act for the United States, for Israel, for the Middle East, and for the world. So the entire world should say on record today, here and now, thank you. Thank you to the United States for removing the greatest threat to global security. Thank you, President Trump, for acting when so many hesitated. Thank you for protecting the free world with strength and with moral clarity. Now, some come here to denounce the United States and Israel. So let me ask you, where were you? Where were you when Iran raced toward the bomb? Where were you when it enriched uranium far beyond the point of civilian usage? When it buried entire fortress beneath mountain to prepare for our extermination? Where were you when Iran turned negotiation into theater and deceit into strategy? You were silent. You were complicit. You were afraid. You were bystanders. Months ago, I sat before this Council and called for a coalition of the courageous. I called for a coalition with the moral clarity and strength to confront the greatest threat our world has seen since the Second World War. Last night, the leader of the free world acted with that courage. The United States acted, not just for itself, but for every nation that values freedom over radicalism, for every nation whose children deserve to grow up without the shadow of a nuclear disaster hanging over their heads. Now, the world must follow suit. Madam President, we have heard many calls for diplomacy today in this chamber. We have heard the Secretary General calls for de-escalation. You cannot ignore that diplomacy was tried over and over. The United States led that effort. Many nations here in this room engaged in diplomacy with determination and good faith. But the regime in Tehran had other plans. It used the negotiating table as camouflage, a delay tactic, a way to buy time while building missiles and enriching uranium. Iran negotiated agreements it never intended to keep. It made commitments it never honored. It answered deadlines with defiance and met oversight with obstruction. The free world gave it every chance. We gave it months, we gave it years, we gave it every possible off-ramp. Iran would not move. So it had to be moved. The regime goal was never peaceful energy. Its goal was death and destruction. Its nuclear program was not a diplomatic puzzle. It was a loaded gun pointed at the heart of the international system and the stability of the world. To those who now fake concern and cry escalation, we say, this is what the last line of defense looks like, when every other line has failed. Make no mistake, the cost of inaction would have been catastrophic. A nuclear Iran would have been a death sentence just as much for you as it would have been for us. Madam President, while Iran fired rockets at synagogues, mosques, schools, and homes, the United States acted with precision, as does Israel. Israel's targets are not cities. They were not civilians. They were not homes or schools. They are ballistic missile launchers and nuclear sites. This is a moral difference between us and them. They seek chaos, we seek order. They build weapons to destroy the world, we build partnerships to protect it. As you all know, we have already gained air superiority across Iranian skies. We have acted with purpose. We have acted with restraint. And we will act with the moral clarity that has always defined our people. Iran's reach extends far beyond our borders. It arms militias in Iraq. It commands terror in Lebanon. It funds Houthis in Yemen. It plots murder in Europe. And it threatens every capital in the West with its growing arsenal of ballistic missiles. You cannot sit this one out. You cannot condemn the firefighters while the arsonist tries to light more fires. You cannot protect peace by appeasing evil. Colleagues, Israel did not seek this moment. But when that moment came, we did not flinch. We know what happens when the world turns a blind eye to threats too terrible to imagine. This time, we acted. And this time, we were not alone. Let the record show, when the world stood at the edge of a nuclear disaster, America stepped forward. When time ran out, America showed courage. And when the moment came to confront the forces of extinction, America led. Now it is time for the rest of the world to guarantee that the threat of a nuclear Iran never returns. Thank you, Madam President.
Trump is lying when he says that Iran was about to develop a nuclear weapon. In the life of Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu to have ever actually used nuclear weapons in war. The people are here because we are going to be in the streets. We are going to be commanding.
Do something else. We need to go on the offense and offer an alternative vision for this country as to where we want America to go. And at the top of that agenda at this moment is to say no to the Netanyahu-Trump war in Iran. Let me just tell you a story, if I might. Back in the mid-1960s, I was a young man. Yes, I was young at one point. And at that point, the American government, then under Democratic leadership, lied to the American people and took us into a terrible war in Vietnam. Now, I know a lot of young people might not be familiar with that war, but the American people were lied to about what South Vietnam was doing and so forth and so on. And we went into that war. In that war, 58,000 young Americans died, and over 300,000 were wounded. The Vietnam War devastated my entire generation. It will never leave my mind, because those were my friends, people my age who went off to Vietnam. My wife had a couple of good friends, went off to Vietnam, never came back. And for those who came back, it's not just 300,000 who were wounded. Many of those came back wounded in spirit, in mind. They were devastated by what they saw. They came home to a country that was divided because many people opposed that war. And that war not only caused so many American casualties, it killed millions of Vietnamese, and it brought instability to that entire region. And the result of that is a crazy group of people called the Khmer Rouge rose to power in Cambodia and waged a genocide in Cambodia, which killed over 2 million Cambodians. The cost of the war to the American taxpayer was many, many hundreds of billions of dollars. In other words, a lie caused massive, horrible death and suffering. That was what my generation went through in the 60s. And then years later, in 2002, I was a second-term member of Congress from Vermont, just elected to the Congress. And we heard the rhetoric in 2002 get stronger and stronger about the need to go to war against Iraq and its leader, Saddam Hussein. We were told by all kinds of people in the establishment and much of the media that Iraq was building weapons of mass destruction, and that if we did not act quickly and decisively, nuclear weapons would be dropping on America. And I want you to hear this, because this tells you a lot about what's going on today. Among those back in 2002 who told us that we had to go to war in Iraq was none other than Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel. And this is what, and I quote, this is what Netanyahu stated in a congressional hearing, and I quote, "There is no question whatsoever that Saddam is seeking nuclear weapons. If you take out Saddam's regime, I guarantee you that it will have enormous positive reverberations," end quote. Netanyahu. Now, President George W. Bush at the time, he said, quote, "Saddam's regime is seeking a nuclear bomb," end quote. And he argued for a preemptive attack, saying, quote, "We cannot wait for the final proof, the smoking gun, which could come in the form of a mushroom cloud," end quote. The United States Congress, against my vote, went to war in Iraq. And we became involved in a terrible regional civil war there. No weapons of mass destruction were ever found. That war was based on a lie which cost us 4,500 young Americans, 32,000 wounded, and trillions of dollars. I will never forget going to funeral after funeral in my small state of Vermont for young men who died in that war. As a result of the war, the entire region was destabilized. Hundreds of thousands of Iraqis also died in that war. A few months ago, in terms of what's going on right now, Trump's own director of national intelligence told Congress, this is his national director of intelligence, said, quote, the intelligence community continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and Supreme Leader Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear weapons program he suspended in 2003, end quote. The Netanyahu government of Israel started this war with an unprovoked attack against Iran. This is the same government that is currently starving and shooting down innocent people in Gaza. Brothers and sisters, we cannot allow history to repeat itself. The United States faces enormous problems here at home. We should be spending our money and our manpower rebuilding America, not going into a war against Iran. I am not gonna tell you that the fight against the oligarchs and the war makers is going to be easy. It is not going to be easy. They have enormous wealth. They have enormous power. They control much of the media. But this is what I do know. The American people do not want a government of billionaires. They want health care as a human right. They don't want tax breaks for oligarchs. They want the rich to start paying their fair share of taxes. They don't want a war with Iran. They want to invest in our own people.
Do anything or take any activity.
Are we changing security policies at ports of entry since Saturday?
I can't talk about that.
Secretary, what's your message to Americans who are seeing what's going on overseas and are concerned about an attack in the homeland? What is your message to them?
You know, what I would tell the people that live in this country is to be grateful that they woke up this morning in the United States of America. Because we woke up here, are more blessed than 99% of the people in the world, because we live in a country where freedom and liberty is embraced, and that's what our president was protecting by going after specific nuclear sites in Iran. Was something that was non-negotiable, and he did not do anything except take out the potential for that nuclear weapon to be utilized. This country is leading the world and has been for many years, and will continue to do so as long as we still have strong leadership like President Trump's in the White House.
Are Americans safer today because of the actions on Saturday?
I believe that the president worked aggressively to make sure that we are safer, and will be into the future as well.
Are you? Why is it worth targeting Iran's nuclear facilities now that they have retaliated against U.S. interests overseas and there's a risk of a regional war?
The president warned them not to retaliate, but he was also very clear that the threat of Iran obtaining nuclear capability is a threat not just to Israel and the Middle East, but to the United States as well. They've been very clear about their intentions and how much they hate us. Remember that Iran is the largest state sponsor of terrorism. All the proxies that have done such great harm to Americans over the years are at their behest. They were working on that, and the president made an evaluation that the danger was imminent enough to take his authority as commander-in-chief and make that decision.
Why not have the
past couple of months, we've had
Congress
so
vote
many
on
strikes
this? Why not have the Congress vote
on soil here. We've had so many strikes here on U.S. soil, attacks against Jews in Boulder and here in Washington, D.C., Governor Shapiro. Do you think that this threat is so serious now, just not at anti-Semitic attacks here, but there's a grave concern about somebody being triggered, doing something here in the United States in response to what happened?
Well, we've been in a heightened threat scenario for quite some time, and it's something that we're very vigilant about, as is law enforcement throughout the country, and of course our federal agencies. We get briefings on this routinely, and we know where the threats are and the assessments, but it's a heightened period, of course. Members are concerned about that, as you know. Some of our Jewish members in particular have been targeted, even in recent days, by crazed people. We're going to prosecute those folks to the full extent of the law, and we're going to do everything we can within our power to make sure members are safe and free to do their jobs. There's a number of resources available for protection in that regard, and we're researching other avenues to make sure everyone who serves the public can do so in a safe manner.
Why not have Congress vote on Iran? Why not have, just given that you're the imminence of this threat?
So look, there's been so much talk ranging from AOC suggesting this is an impeachable offense, which is just absolute nonsense, to people suggesting that Congress should dither over this. Look, the Commander-in-Chief has Article 2 responsibilities. They're very serious and important, especially in times like this. I think he used that authority judiciously. I think this Commander-in-Chief means what he says what he means, and he's trying to protect American assets and personnel. We had 40,000 servicemen, men and women over there in that region, and they were in imminent danger, as was our allies in Israel, and as were we. Remember, the international body that is supposed to be monitoring Iran's nuclear program determined in May that they were days away from having capability. That is
Will you allow Massey's War Powers resolution to come to the floor?
I don't think this is an appropriate time for a War Powers resolution, and I don't think it's necessary. Listen, for 80 years, presidents of both parties have acted with the same Commander-in-Chief authority under Article 2. You had President Biden used 3 times in Middle East operations. President Obama went on an 8-month campaign bombing Libya to take down the regime there. I never heard a Democrat balk about any of that. And suddenly now they're just up in arms. It's all politics. This is not a time for politics. This is a very serious
regime change in Iran.
Missiles at a U.S. base in Qatar and Iraq, reportedly. Should the U.S. respond to those attacks?
We're monitoring that very closely. I got a classified briefing on all this early this morning. This is the retaliation that was expected. So far, so good. No casualties, so far as we know. And I know that the national security team is in the Situation Room even as we speak, and they're monitoring this.
Do you think it's symbolic? Is that your view?
I'm not gonna comment on it because I don't want to affect any of these events.
But do you think the president should respond? Should the president respond to
It's
this?
up to the Commander-in-Chief. I mean, he sent a very clear message that they should not. He wanted Iran to come back to the negotiating table in good faith. The problem is they weren't there in the first place.
Big,
so we could never
big
get
beautiful
there.
bill. We're here until they finish in the Senate. I mean, it looks like they might not get to this till the end of next week, over the weekend. That means you guys
I'm withholding my judgment until I get that final product, but I'm working with individual senators, leadership, and our own members to keep the train on the tracks. You know what my deadline was July.
Busy for us all. Yes, for us all. Yeah. You all framed up, Eddie?
Anytime.
Okay. Well, thanks for talking to me. I saw your post on X. You're obviously very concerned about the action the president authorized against Iran. And you say it's not consistent with the MAGA agenda. Why?
Well, I got elected on the exact same campaign promises that President Trump got elected on. We promised no more foreign wars, no more regime change. We promised an America First agenda where we're solving Americans' problems and trying to claw our way out of this $37 trillion debt. You know, most Americans right now, they care about maybe next weekend's concert, a vacation they plan for the summer. I know my kids' generation, who are 22, 25, and 27, this is a generation who it looks very bleak for the future. They can't afford houses. They can't afford insurance. They can't find good paying jobs. They can't afford to buy a car. And groceries cost too much money. Going out to eat costs too much money. And this is a situation that has me most concerned. And that's where my focus lies. But that's also the same focus of President Trump, and that's what we promised. My district voted for me on those promises. They also voted for President Trump on those promises. And I've been very vocal We don't belong in foreign wars. This is not our war, and it's perfectly okay for me to say that. And I've also stated this, it's okay to have our own opinions. It's okay to disagree on policy. That's what Americans do, and that's what Republicans do.
The president said he would not get engaged in foreign wars. He said he would end foreign wars when he was campaigning. Was this move, did it break his campaign promise?
I don't think so. As a matter of fact, I think what we just saw develop today, where Iran had a response, an attack on the base in Qatar, I think, and we saw President Trump's measured response, and his message on Truth Social is exactly the same messaging that we elected him for. He wants peace. He wants this to end, and he's going to urge Israel that it's time to end. And it absolutely is time to end. All the wars need to end. What's happening in Gaza needs to end. The attack on Iran needs to end. The war between Ukraine and Russia needs to end. All of these conflicts around the world need to end, because the only people they hurt are the people in those countries, and it also hurts the ability for great countries to have great trade deals, and that has an effect on Americans as well.
When you hear Republicans, including in the White House, say that this needed to be done to stop Iran from developing a nuclear weapon, because that could threaten America, what do you say to them when they're warning that if you guys didn't act, if the U.S. didn't act now, it would lead to more danger to Americans?
Well, I have to preface with first, we haven't had a classified briefing yet. We're supposed to get one tomorrow, and I haven't been in a skiff and seen the information. But I will say this, we have been told these things over and over and over again for decades. We were told there was weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and there wasn't. And thousands of Americans were killed there, and thousands of Iraqis were killed. Many people were killed. We have people suffering today with terrible PTSD and lifelong injuries from these wars that we should have never gotten involved in. They were pointless. And so many Americans are very wary when all of a sudden the news comes on and it starts saying why we're attacking a country, when most Americans are walking around, they're not thinking about Iran, they're not worried about a Houthi, and they don't even know what a Houthi looks like, they're not worried about what Russia is doing, they're very much focused on their American life and their American problems, and that's exactly what they should be focused on. And I think it's important to have this dialogue. It's critically important. We're $37 trillion in debt, and we have a lot of problems to fix, and that's what I want to focus on.
So it sounds like you're pretty skeptical about the claim that the U.S. was facing an imminent threat.
Again, we haven't had the classified briefing yet.
Should there have been a vote in Congress before Trump took this action?
There wasn't a vote for Barack Obama before he bombed Libya and Syria and Iraq. There wasn't a vote for President Bush's many bombings and major war front. So no, the president by law can lead. He's the commander-in-chief.
So you're okay. You're fine with Congress not voting here?
I think, constitutionally, after 60 days, it is something Congress needs to look at. But let's be realistic. Congress isn't very good at doing very many things, Manu, and that's the truth. And here we are, we're fighting over certain parts of the big, beautiful bill and trying to get an appropriations budget passed. So I don't know what a vote would look like here in Congress. I think President Trump is the leader. He is the president. He's the commander-in-chief, and I support him.
And just big picture, do you think this alienates the MAGA base at all? You speak to the MAGA base a lot. Forbes, you are part of the MAGA base.
Yes.
Does this move, you think, alienate the MAGA base?
I think what you're seeing is a very big divide in the MAGA base, and I think that's also something important to talk about, and I think it's generational. My parents' generation are baby boomers. The baby boomers get their news, they get it on television. My generation, I'm Generation X, and millennials, and my kids' generation in their 20s, they get their news mostly on the internet, from blogs, videos, and so forth. They also do a lot of research. They're skeptical, I'm skeptical too, of just believing whatever I see on television. And Americans feel that way. We've been lied to too many times, and I think it's right to be skeptical. But I think you're seeing a major divide in Republican voters. Now, I'll argue that my position would become more popular. I was one of the first people that was completely against the Ukraine-Russia war. I refused to fund any of it. I voted no to all of that. I was in the very, very tiny minority in the beginning, and now my voice, my opinion, and what I said about that war is actually the majority of opinion for Americans. If this war were to continue and we were to sadly see American troops coming home on flag-draped coffins, I think you would see Americans totally saying the same thing I'm saying. I hope that never happens. Again, I think President Trump has us on a path to peace, and I think that's what he's working on, and I hope Israel does the same thing.
Do you worry politically the divide here could hurt Republicans in the midterms?
I hope not. But I'll say this, I think Republicans need to earn Americans' votes. You know, I have no problem being critical of Republicans, and I don't think we're earning our votes in the midterm, and that's on Congress. We need to be passing executive orders. We need to be cutting the spending, and we need to pass the president's agenda. And I think that way we can win the midterms.
This is the first time I've really heard you be critical of President Trump.
I'm not being critical of President Trump. Manu, you've heard me say over and over again as we've talked now, and as Alex videoing with his camera, I've said over and over, I support the president. So any narrative against me would be a lie, and that would be a smear against me, and it would be wrong to say that. What I have said is I can disagree with the president. Currently in his administration, he's got plenty of people that have disagreed with him in the past. He's got Tulsi Gabbard. She ran against him for president in 2020. She's got RFK. He's got RFK. He ran against him in 2024. And there's many former Democrats that are supporters and donors. But that's what MAGA is. It's a collection of Americans that have come together and say America first.
You think that, but you think he's listening to the neocons, I suppose. That's sort of what I gathered from your post.
Oh, I think the neocons were beating the war drums really hard, and they were all over social media and all over TV, and they've been pushing. They would love to have more foreign wars. That's what they absolutely love. I'm completely against that. I'm unapologetic about saying that. It's okay for me to disagree with President Trump. That's perfectly fine. You know, Democrats right now are out protesting in the streets saying no kings. We settled that in 1776. We handled that. No more kings. President Trump is not a king, and MAGA is not a cult, and I'm entitled to my own opinion. I can support the president at the same time as I say I don't think we should have foreign wars, and I can tell you right now, President Trump doesn't want to stay in a foreign war either.
Have you talked to him at all about this last day or two?
He's been pretty busy.
I appreciate the time.
Yeah,
all right,
you
thanks
bet.
a lot.
Thank
all
you.
Right, yep.
Yeah, we'll see you later.
See you. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Have you spoken to him this morning? How confident are you that Iran is going to take the completely demolished?
I think it's been completely demolished. I think the reason we're here is because those pilots, those B-2 pilots, did an unbelievable job. And you know, the fake news, like CNN in particular, they're trying to say, well, I agree that it was destroyed, but maybe not that destroyed. You know what they're doing? They're really hurting great pilots that put their lives in the line. CNN is scum, and so is MSDNC. They're all, and frankly, the networks aren't much better. It's all fake news, but they should not have done that. Those pilots hit their targets. Those targets were obliterated, and the pilots should be given credit. They're not after the pilots, they're after me. They want to try and demean.
You don't believe that Iran can rebuild its nuclear program?
No, Iran will never rebuild its nuclear. From there? Absolutely not. That place is under rock. That place is demolished. The B-2 pilots did their job. They did it better than anybody could even imagine. They hit late in the evening. It was dark with no moon, and they hit that target with every one of those things, and that place is gone. But when I see CNN all night long, they're trying to say, well, maybe it wasn't really as demolished as we thought. It was demolished. You take a look at the pinpricks, and you see that place is gone. And I will say, I think CNN ought to apologize to the pilots of the B-2s. I think that MSDNC ought to apologize. I think these guys really, these networks and these cable networks are real losers. You really are. You're real losers. You're gutless losers. I say that to CNN because I watch it. I have no choice. I got to watch that garbage. It's all garbage. It's all fake news. But I think CNN is a gutless group of people. And the people that run it, nobody even knows it's been sold so many times, but the people that run it ought to be ashamed. MSDNC, a guy named Brian Roberts, he heads it. He's a disgrace. He's a weak, pathetic disgrace.
Mr. Speaker, and still I rise. And I rise today in the name of government of the people, by the people, for the people. I rise today because our country is nearing a moment of decision. I rise because we are at the intersection of democracy and autocracy. I rise to announce that at this moment in time, I have filed HRES 537. HRES 537 is a privileged resolution. HRES 537 has been filed because I believe that the President of the United States has committed an impeachable act. HRES 537 addresses abuse of presidential powers by disregarding the separation of powers, devolving American democracy into an authoritarian government, usurping congressional power to declare war. Mr. Speaker, I take no delight in what I'm doing. I do this because I love my country. I do this because I understand that the Constitution is going to be meaningful or it will be meaningless. I do it because I understand that the President of the United States of America has a duty to consult Congress before taking this country to war. I do it because no one person should have the power to take over 300 million people to war without consulting with the Congress of the United States of America. I do this because if I do not, this authoritarian president that we currently have will continue to assume power. He has already instigated an assault on the citadel of democracy, the capital of the United States of America. He went so far as to pardon the persons who were actually involved in the assault. He has denied persons due process of the law. I believe that if we do not take immediate action, this authoritarian president will not only devolve the country into authoritarianism, I believe he is a would-be dictator who would become a dictator. So I today announce that later today, I will bring these articles of impeachment to the floor and I will call for a vote. I believe that the hour of decision is upon us and we all have to decide, are we going to go down and choose the path of democracy, or we allow ourselves to choose the low road of autocracy? I believe that this country has come too far to allow a single person to declare war without conferring with the Congress of the United States of America. This is where I stand. This is what I will do, and I do it in the name of my country that I love dearly. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Thanks so much. It is about progress, Tony. That's so well said. And I'm so grateful for these fine Americans who stood here representing hundreds of millions of Americans in all their various endeavors. And this bill, the One Big Beautiful Bill, is geared for those hardworking Americans. It is going to help all boats rise. And we are so excited to get this thing over the line. And I'll give you more updates on that. In the meantime, Tony and Paul and Sam and Sheriff Stewart, thank you again for your time this morning. Let me zoom out. We'll just talk about foreign affairs quickly, and then we'll zoom back in on the big, beautiful bill. I know the conflict in the Middle East is top of mind for everyone, and it is for us as well. Over the weekend, of course, President Trump fulfilled what was a bipartisan, long-standing national security priority by carrying out successful strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. Everyone around the world applauded this expertly performed duty by our extraordinary, unmatched military. Some of them applauded loudly and openly, and some of them quietly, but everybody except the evil regime in Iran knows this was the right thing to do. It's important to remember who we're discussing here, okay? Evil is the right word. Iran is the largest state sponsor of terrorism on planet Earth. The Iranian regime has been responsible for thousands of American deaths over the years, and an untold number of maimings with roadside bombs all over the Middle East. They have funded and propped up terror proxies like Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis, and their stated goal is the death and destruction of America, and of course Israel. That's why for decades presidents have talked tough on Iran. They've talked tough. President Clinton said, quote, "I believe all the Western nations have an overriding interest in containing the threat posed by Iran," unquote. President Obama, he said, "I have stated that Iran will never be allowed to obtain a nuclear weapon," unquote. President Biden, quote, "We will not," let me say again, "we will not allow Iran to acquire a nuclear weapon." But it was President Trump who did more than talk. He acted, and it was long overdue. And his decisive action led to a weakened and vulnerable Iran that gives them no other choice than to come to the table, which they refused to do in good faith before. The president secured a ceasefire between Israel and Iran, and despite of the temporary disruption this morning, we believe that will hold. Peace in the Middle East has never been closer within our grasp, and that is something that we should all embrace and applaud. And we were heartened to see even people on the other side of the aisle, right-thinking, common-sense folks, say that this was the right move. The ceasefire is fragile, but it is very real. I spoke to the president this morning right before Air Force One took off from the tarmac. He's headed over to the NATO meeting, as you all know. And we talked about his frustration with the temporary disruption and the ceasefire overnight. And he told me he had just spoken to Prime Minister Netanyahu and encouraged him not to retaliate in any heavy way. And I think that request has been heeded. I told the president that I would immediately echo the same sentiment to my counterpart over there and my good friend, Speaker Ohana and the Knesset. I did that. I believe that Israel and the United States are locked arm in arm on this, and that unified front and that common goal is what is going to maintain peace. So I just want to say overall, this is America First policy in action. This is, as has been said here already this morning, the penultimate demonstration of peace through strength. This is what it means. But you got to have a strong commander-in-chief to make sure that happens. Regarding the presidential authority, now naturally, of course, we've got some Democrats here on Capitol Hill who they have an allergic knee-jerk reaction to anything that President Trump does, no matter how noble and good. And they of course, are opposed to his latest work to make Americans safer and bring peace in the Middle East, if you can imagine that. Some have even called for his impeachment over this. It's absolutely outrageous. It would be comical if it were not so serious and stupid. Let me be clear and be as clear as possible. The strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities were clearly within President Trump's Article 2 powers as commander-in-chief. It shouldn't even be in dispute. Allow me to put my constitutional law hat on for a moment, because that's what I used to do, because both the law and the precedent are important for everyone to understand here. This may answer a lot of questions that you might ask this morning. The framers of our Constitution never intended for the president to seek the approval of Congress every time he exercises his constitutional authority under Article 2 as commander-in-chief. Alexander Hamilton argued in Federalist number 70, just for one example, that, quote, "Energy in the executive is a leading character in the definition of good government. It is essential to the protection of the community against foreign attacks," unquote. This is why the framers did not explicitly set restrictions on the president when it comes to using military force. They understood something very practical about our matchless legislative body here in our Constitution. The way the Congress was set up, they knew it would be a deliberative body, and they knew that process by necessity would take time. And in an emergent and imminent situation, time is not something we always have the luxury of. And so they wanted, in moments of danger and conflict abroad, for one single hand of authority to have that authority to act decisively and effectively. Now we're hearing some talk about the War Powers Resolution. What is that exactly? Congress passed that legislation in 1973 under President Richard Nixon. It bars the use of armed forces in conflict beyond 60 days without congressional authorization or a formal declaration of war. A 30-day withdrawal period follows thereafter under the statute. It also requires that the president inform Congress within 48 hours of use of military force. Obviously, President Trump did that. Obviously, in the modern era with the 24-hour news cycle and social media, nothing goes by unnoticed. This might have made some sense in 1973, but I'm not even sure it was constitutional, and I'll tell you about that as well. Many respected constitutional experts argue that the War Powers Act is itself unconstitutional. I'm persuaded by that argument. They think it's a violation of the Article II powers of the Commander-in-Chief. I think that's right. If you look back at the Founders' intent, you read the Federalist Papers, you read the records of the Constitutional Convention, I think that is right. And many more scholars believe the President is correct to use this executive authority in exactly the manner that he did over the weekend. I am a jealous guardian of Congress's Article I authority. We are the defenders of it here, and we take it seriously, and I always will be. But exercising the authority to declare war isn't something we've done since World War II. And everybody in this room knows, since then we've had more than 125 military operations, from Korea and Vietnam to Iraq and Afghanistan. They have occurred without a declaration of war by Congress. Presidents of both parties have exercised that authority frequently. A few recent examples: President Biden ordered strikes on Iraq, Syria, and Yemen. President Obama launched an 8-month-long bombing campaign in Libya to oust Gaddafi. President Clinton initiated air patrols and air strikes in Bosnia and a bombing campaign in Yugoslavia. Every one of those actions were taken unilaterally and without prior authorization from Congress. The bottom line is the Commander-in-Chief is the President. The military reports to the President, and the person empowered to act on the nation's behalf is the President. The last few days have unfolded exactly as the law outlines and as history has demonstrated and as the framers of the Constitution intended. I'm convinced of that. Let me change subjects and we'll zoom in back to domestic affairs and the one big beautiful bill. I will say it's very relevant to the discussion about global affairs because one of the things, as you all know, that the big beautiful bill will accomplish is it will support our military funding. While congressional Democrats feign concern about the safety and well-being of U.S. service members, House Republicans are working to deliver legislation that actually accomplishes that and supports them. I think it's really important that amid this global threat landscape that we point out there's never been a better time for a piece of legislation, a generational, once-in-a-generation opportunity legislation like the One Big Beautiful Bill. This bill funds President Trump's Golden Dome to bolster long-range missile defense capabilities. How many of you know that's kind of important right now? It accelerates the modernization of our nuclear deterrent. Couldn't have a better time for that. And it revitalizes our defense industrial base. Here's a few specifics. $34 billion to expand the size and capabilities of our naval fleet. To $25 billion for the Golden Dome. $21 billion to restock America's arsenal of munitions and ramp up domestic production of rare earth and critical minerals. $13 billion for nuclear deterrence. $12 billion to enhance military readiness, among many other great provisions that I won't bore you with listing. It's exciting stuff. And the One Big Beautiful Bill is a generational investment in American military might. And we need to get it to President Trump's desk as soon as possible. I think we will. With that, I'll take a few questions.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Jeff. How are you? How are you? We have breaking news. Everything good? Israel, as you know, turned back. They didn't do that raid this morning, fortunately. That was a big thing. Appreciate it. They had a lot of planes going, and they were going to do something, and they didn't do it. And we're happy about that. Very happy about that. So the ceasefire is very much in effect, and I think we're going to keep it there for a long time.
Did you speak to Prime Minister Netanyahu about that?
I did.
What did you tell him?
I said you got to turn back the planes. They were going to go because. Look, they hit him very hard after we made the deal yesterday. They were entitled to, but nobody thought that would have happened. But they hit him very hard, and that shouldn't have happened. And then, as you know, Iran hit them very hard last night because of that. I don't think they would have, except for the first hard hit. And I guess a missile was launched a couple of minutes afterwards, which went nowhere, which hit nothing. And there was going to be a retaliation this morning by Israel. And I said, you got to call back the planes. It's enough. It's enough. And they did, which I respect very greatly. So nobody was killed. That was the story. But they had a lot of planes going in the wrong direction. You know that, right?
Do you want any consequences for Israel or Iran for breaking?
They didn't do anything. No, they didn't do anything. They would have if I put out a statement on truth, and they didn't do anything.
Sir, how are you confident that this might not happen again?
say in a couple weeks that...
Tired of it. I think they don't want it to happen again. And Iran's not going to have a nuclear weapon, by the way. I think it's the last thing on their...
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Leader. President Trump made the announcement of the strike on Truth Social. So much of the information that we're finding out is from his social media. Are you concerned that a Truth Social post or some sort of social media post could lead to unintended escalation? What are your thoughts about how the president is just conducting his outreach to the American people through his social media channels?
Yes, it's all extraordinary. You know, Donald Trump stated on social media that 3 sites were hit. Were 3 sites hit? We don't know. That's why we need a briefing. Donald Trump suggested that there was a ceasefire, and then it no longer appeared that there was actually a ceasefire. That's why we need, on behalf of the American people, a congressional briefing. Donald Trump suggested that Iran's nuclear program had been completely and totally obliterated. Was that the case, or was that not the case? We don't know. The American people don't know. The American people deserve the truth, not Truth Social posts that are increasingly unhinged. The American people deserve to know the truth. And that process begins with a congressional briefing that flows from the constitutional responsibility that Congress has and has alone to declare war. The Constitution is not an inconvenience. George Washington, in his farewell address to Congress, and on this issue, George Washington is the OG, the original general, the original war hero, the original revolutionary, and then the first president. And in his farewell address to Congress, he said that the Constitution is sacredly obligatory upon all. That means everyone. That came from the OG, the original general. And Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11 is very clear. On behalf of the American people, Congress, and Congress alone, has the responsibility of declaring war. And that is why the president needs to explain why he did not seek authorization for the use of military force.
Thanks, Senator. I told you to come back.
Yes, you kept your promise. We can't believe it. Senator, can you tell us, have you seen this latest intel and reporting that Iran's nuclear capabilities have only been pushed back a few months by these strikes rather than permanently?
Yeah, I've only seen the news reports that say, or some are making the allegation that 400 kilograms of highly enriched uranium to 60% were removed in advance. I don't know the veracity of that. I've just read that in the news. I have no special knowledge and have not been briefed on this. I do think that it is an open question. And I hope they're done. I hope they are chastened by this and they want to be part of the community of nations and friendly with everybody, and they don't want a nuclear program anymore. But there's also the opposite possibility that they make a sprint towards finishing off highly enriched uranium and completing a nuclear weapon. I don't think anybody knows yet. So this will either be heralded as the greatest military strike in recent history, or if they make a sprint to the nuclear weapon, people will look back, in retrospect and say, oh my goodness, what happened here? I don't think it's known yet. I don't think anybody knows, and it may take a while to know. I doubt there will be any kind of inspections. I don't think there are going to be nuclear inspections. I don't expect Iran to let anybody come in and look at the facilities. They will say one thing, but it'll obviously have some propaganda effect that they're trying to display, and others will say something else. But I'm not sure we're going to know for a while. I think it's going to take a while to assess things through satellite photos, but I think ultimately it's going to take a while until Iran reveals which direction they're going.
Is that why you think that the briefing's been delayed, the classified briefing?
I think because they're out of town. I think Hegseth and Rubio were at NATO meetings overseas.
The CDC Vaccine Advisory Panel is meeting tomorrow for the first time with its new members after Secretary Kennedy
dismissed the previous ones. How do you feel about those members? I know Chair Cassidy.
I've been calling for 2 years for the members of these committees to reveal if they get royalties from Big Pharma. I don't know how you can sit on a vaccine committee and not inform the public whether you get money from Moderna or Pfizer, and how you could possibly vote on whether vaccines should be mandated for the whole country if you're receiving royalties. I don't know if they were, but they would refuse to answer the question. I asked Fauci that question in 2021, and he says we don't have to answer it. Imagine in your community if somebody on the city council owned a textbook company, or let's say they're on the school board, and they voted to give themselves a contract, they would go to jail. You know, we have rules in every city council that you have to reveal your conflict of interest. So I commend Secretary Kennedy for cleaning house, because they wouldn't reveal if they had any conflicts. I have a bill that I'm still hoping to pass, and you would think would pass unanimously, that you have to reveal if you have royalties. If you're on one of these science committees, you have to reveal. And there are rumors of some of the people making millions of dollars. There was a revelation of NIH grants and outside money that said, I think it was 1,000 doctors or 1,500 scientists received over, I think it was over $1 billion. So we're not talking about small, Fauci wants to say, I got $20 one time. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. So I say, good riddance. If you're not going to tell the American people if you have a conflict, let's try to get some people in there that will be honest.
And how...
You'll cut that out, right?
And then how about the new CDC director nominee, Susan Monterey, coming before you guys for a minute?
Excuse me. I met with her. Where's my bottle of water? Where's my Just a second.
We'll blame the heat.
Yeah, no, I was will come back in a second. I do feel like Robert Kennedy. But anyway, and I don't mean that to be mean. I like Robert Kennedy. But I have met with her, and we haven't made any final decisions about her. But from my discussions with her, she said she would be supportive of what Secretary Kennedy is doing. And if that's true, I will support her, but I'm not ready to make a decision or announcement today. Maybe one more question.
I want to ask about Speaker Johnson saying
Say again?
Speaker Johnson said this morning that the War Powers Act may not be constitutional.
Peter Johnson or Mike Johnson?
Speaker
Speaker Johnson. I thought you said Peter Johnson. Who's Peter Johnson? Speaker Johnson. What is constitutional is what is written in the Constitution, and it says only Congress. Congress has the exclusive right, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11, to declare war. So if he wants to talk about the Constitution, he should read it, and then if he wants to discuss with us why he thinks that Congress shouldn't be involved with this, the Federalist Papers were very clear. Madison wrote that the executive branch is the branch of government most prone to war, before the Constitution, with studied care, vested that power in the legislature. This was a big discussion among the Founding Fathers. They were tired of chronically being at war. They knew that Europe was always fighting each other. England was always fighting France. You had 100-year wars. You had 40-year wars. We didn't want that. We wanted to make war less easy to happen, so we gave that power to Congress. And they've been ignoring that. But I think the Speaker needs to review the Constitution, and I think there's a lot of evidence that the Founding Fathers did not want presidents to unilaterally go to war.
We're with them all the way. I mean, if you take a look at the numbers, we're with them. I've been asking them to go up to 5% for a number of years, and they're going up to 5%, and that's a big, from 2%. And a lot of people didn't even pay the 2%. So I think it's going to be very big news. NATO is going to become very strong with us. I don't want to use an example of Hiroshima. I don't want to use an example of Nagasaki. But that was essentially the same thing. That ended that war. This ended that with the war. If we didn't take that out, they'd be fighting right now. They're not going to be fighting each other. They've had it. They've had a big fight, like two kids in a schoolyard. You know, they fight like hell. You can't stop them. Let them fight for about 2-3 minutes. Then it's easier to stop them.
And then Daddy has to sometimes use strong language.
You have to use strong language. Every once in a while, you have to use a certain word. Be building bombs for a long time.
Mr. President, what's your reaction to the intelligence reports saying that the Iranian nuclear sites were only partially devastated? devastated, not entirely.
Yeah, well, they said it was, actually the report said it could have been they don't know. I mean, they did a report. I could have Pete talk to it because his department did the report. They really don't know. I think Israel's going to be telling us very soon because Bibi is going to have people involved in that whole situation. We hear it was obliteration. It was a virtual obliteration. When you take a look at the ground above, don't forget the flame is all underground. But everything above, if you look at the before and the after picture, everything above is burned black. The trees, everything. There's one building, but that's a building that sunk substantially into the granite, so that, you know, the fire goes right over it. It was, I believe it was total obliteration. I believe they didn't have a chance to get anything out because we acted fast. If it would have taken 2 weeks, maybe, but it's very hard to remove that kind of material. Very hard and very dangerous for them to remove it. Plus, they knew we were coming, and if they know we're coming, they're not going to be down there. There aren't too many people that are going to be down there. Pete, do you have something to say about that?
Well, Mr. President, when you talk to the people who built the bombs, understand what those bombs can do, and deliver those bombs, they landed precisely where they were supposed to, so it was a flawless mission.
Flawless.
Right down where we knew they needed to enter, and given the 30,000 pounds of explosives and capability of those munitions, it was devastation underneath Fordo. And the amount of munitions, 6 per location, any assessment that tells you it was something otherwise is speculating with other motives. And we know that because when you actually look at the report, by the way, it was a top secret report, it was preliminary, it was low confidence. All right, so this is you make assessments based on what you know.
They said it could be very devastating, very serious.
Moderate to severe, and we believe far more likely severe and obliterated. So this is a political motive here.
Was there a leak investigation?
Of course, we're doing a leak investigation with the FBI right now because this information is for internal purposes, battle damage assessments, and CNN and others are trying to spin it to make the president look bad when this was an overwhelming success.
We had a tremendous success, and this is the New York Times. I call it the failing New York Times. It's going to hell. And CNN, which, as you know, very few people are watching. And you would think they'd do the opposite. You would think they'd want to say, this was an unbelievable success. And the thing that hurts me is it's really demeaning to the pilots and the people that put that whole thing together, the generals. That was a perfect operation. And when you look at the holes, and this was done from 52,000 feet, there was no moon, there was no light, and those 3 holes are right together. And also, and nobody talks about this, we shot 30 Tomahawks from submarines, in particular one submarine, but that was 400 miles away. And every one of those Tomahawks hit within a foot of where they were supposed to hit, took out a lot of buildings that Israel wasn't able to get. We took them out with Tomahawks. We don't even talk about that. This was a devastating attack, and it knocked them for a loop. And you know, if it didn't, they wouldn't have settled. If they had won, if we didn't take it out, they wouldn't have settled. Somebody mentioned that to me last night. If that thing wasn't devastated, they would have never settled. Marco, do you have something to say?
No, first of all this stuff about the intelligence, this is what a leaker is telling you the intelligence says. That's the game these people play. They read it, and then they go out and characterize it the way they want it characterized, and they're leakers. This is the game they play. So that's number one. Number two, here's a fact. The conversion facility, which you can't do a nuclear weapon without a conversion facility. We can't even find where it is, where it used to be on the map. You can't even find where it used to be because the whole thing is just blackened out. It's gone.
It's wiped out.
It's wiped out. Then we dropped 12 of the strongest bombs on the planet right down the hole in 2 places. Everything underneath that mountain is in bad shape. And I refer you to the statement of the IAEA, Mr. Grossi. You know what he said? He said there was Iran, the way it looked the day before the attack, and what their nuclear program looks like now. 2 very different things. They are way behind where they were just 7 days ago. Now, anything in the world can be rebuilt, but now we know where it is. And if they try to rebuild it, we'll have options there as well. But all this leaker stuff, these leakers are professional stabbers. That's what they are. They go out and they read this stuff, and then they tell you what it says against the law, but they characterize it for you in a way that's absolutely false. There's no way Iran comes to the table if somehow nothing had happened. This was complete and total obliteration. They're in bad shape. They are way behind today compared to where they were just 7 days ago because of what the president did.
Marco, can I just alert you to one other aspect? So the great thing is you took out the nuclear capability of Iran. This was crucial. You did it in a way which is extremely impressive. But the signal sends to the rest of the world that this president, when it comes to it, yes, he is a man of peace, but if necessary, he is willing to use strength, the enormous strength of the American military. So I think that signal to the rest of the world, this is far beyond Iran, is extremely important. So let me also point us to that aspect of what happens.
They went down, Iran went down to the site afterwards. They said it's so devastated, and they settled when they saw what we did to it. And frankly, if we didn't do that, they would have had a lot of ammunition to keep going. They wouldn't have settled. Somebody brought that up, and 2 Iranians went down to see it, and they called back, and they said, this place is gone. So it's just fake news by CNN, which has got no ratings. It's a failed network. Anybody here from CNN, by the way? Because you're a really disgraceful network. MSNBC, I think, is actually worse. But they're all pretty bad. But yours is good, Katie, I'll tell you. You know what Marco reminded me that he did such a nice job there? It was 9 years ago I had to debate this guy. He was not easy. I think he even got better. But when you were into your little thing, I said, this is when I had to debate this guy. You think it's easy to debate him? It's not easy. A letter just came in, and a statement came in from the Atomic Energy Commission of Israel. And I just wondered, this is an official letter, and they're very serious people, as you know. The devastating U.S. strike on Fordo destroyed the site's critical infrastructure and rendered the enrichment facility totally inoperable. It was devastated. We assess that the American strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities has set back Iran's ability to develop nuclear weapons for many years to come. This achievement can continue indefinitely if Iran does not get access to nuclear material, which it won't. It's so sad that that whole thing had to go. But I just want to thank our pilots. You know, they were maligned and treated very bad, demeaned by fake news CNN, which is back there, believe it or not, wasting time, nobody's watching them, so they're just wasting a lot of time, wasting my time. And the New York Times, they put out a story that, well, maybe they were hit, but it wasn't bad. Well, it was so bad that they ended the war. It ended the war. Somebody said in a certain way, you know, that it was so devastating, actually. If you look at Hiroshima, if you look at Nagasaki, you know, that ended a war too. This ended a war in a different way, but it was so devastating. Also, they have, out of Dubai, just came that Iran's foreign ministry spokesman, this is Iran's foreign ministry, says its nuclear installations were very badly damaged by the American strike. So what bothered me about these reports with fake reports put out by the New York Times, failing, I call it the failing New York Times because it's doing terribly. Without me, it would be doing no business at all. But, and by fake news, CNN and MSDNC, all of these terrible people, you know, they have no credibility. You know, when I started, they were at 94% credibility, the media. Now it's at 16%. And I'm very proud of it because I've exposed it for what it is. But when I saw them starting to question the caliber of the attack, was it bad? Well, it was really bad. It was devastating. They were obliterated. In fact, you can't get into the tunnels. They just put that over. That just came out. They can't. There's nothing. There's no way you can even get down. The whole thing is collapsed in a disaster. And I think all of the nuclear stuff is down there because it's very hard to remove. And we did it very quickly. When they heard we were coming, it was, you know, you can't move it. Very hard, very dangerous, actually, to move to. And they also knew we were coming, so I don't think too many people want to be down there knowing we're coming with the bunker busters, as we call them. We're the only ones that have them. We have the best equipment, best nuclear equipment, and we have the best equipment in the world. And by the way, we can't forget our submarine, which was out there, submarines actually, but submarine was out there. We shot 30 rockets into an area, every single one of them. I think it was almost 400 miles away, I think, Pete, right? 400 and long. It was in the ocean, long ways away. And we shot a total of 30. Every single one of them hit within 9 inches from where it was supposed to be. It took out a lot because we didn't do just Fordo. We did two others in addition, which hadn't been completely destroyed. So we hit them with a submarine from hundreds of miles away. Amazing, just amazing equipment. Greatest submarines in the world. Nobody's even close. They're 20 years behind us when it comes to submarine technology. So that's one, and the other was from the Atomic Energy Commission. And they have about 3 or 4 of them now coming in from atomic energy commissions from various places. But the one that we have that just came out, we released it a little while ago, was from the Israeli Atomic Energy Commission. But numerous of them are getting to see the site, and the site has been demolished. And again, we had these brave patriots, these incredible flyers, these people that can fly a plane better than anybody can fly a plane, going into very hostile territory, flying into the territory that has got more missiles and things pointed at it, but it was very stealth. They didn't get to see it. It was dark. That's the amazing thing about the shots. They hit the shots perfectly, and yet it was dead dark. There was no moon. There was no light. It was virtually moonless. It was very dark, and the shots were hit perfectly. But when they get demeaned, and they were very upset about it because they knew how strong it would be. Back in Missouri, the pilots flew about 36 hours, 2 ways, far distance, and in those incredible B-2s. And we then had the F-22s, and we had the F-35s, and we had other planes, and we had, I think, a total of 52 tankers. That means the big tankers, because the refueling was a lot for all of the different planes that we sent. Incredible operation, and I have to say, General Raisin Cain was incredible. That's why he beat ISIS, and we beat ISIS in a matter of weeks. I was told it would take 4 to 5 years. We did it in a few weeks, and he was great. That's why he's the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff right now, because I had a very good experience with him. He knocked out ISIS in a period of literally a few weeks. Amazing. And it was supposed to take a few years, 5 years to be exact. So we had a great victory there, and we then came here, and I think we had a great victory here. But this is an ongoing project. This is the safety of Europe, the safety of the world. And they've raised it from 2% to 5%, something which nobody, and you're talking about over $1 trillion a year. So we're talking about a lot of money coming in from countries that we're not paying nearly enough to be effective. So I have, as you know, Marco Rubio with me, and Pete Hegseth, Secretary of State and Secretary of War. Should we say Secretary? You know, it used to be called Secretary of War. Maybe for a couple of weeks we'll call it that, because we feel like warriors. It used to be called Secretary of War. In fact, if you look at the old building next to the White House, you can see where it used to be Secretary of War. Then we became politically correct, and they called it Secretary of Defense. I don't know, maybe we'll have to start thinking about changing it, but we feel that way. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. You've made clear your position on what impact the strikes had. I wanted to ask you what is next with Iran. For instance, is there any indication from U.S. intelligence that Iran was able to move any material?
No, just the opposite. We think we hit them so hard and so fast they didn't get to move. And if you knew about that material, it's very hard and very dangerous to move. It's called, in many people, they call it dust, but it's very, very heavy. It's very, very hard to move. And they were way down. You know, they're 30 stories down. They're literally 30, 35 stories down underground.
Do you think you got it all?
Oh, yeah, we think we got it. We think it's covered with granite, concrete, and steel.
Can I ask you, are you interested in restarting negotiations with Iran? And if so, have they received?
So our people, Marco could answer this, but our people are not, I'm not. The way I look at it, they fought, the war's done, and, you know, I could get a statement that they're not going to go nuclear. We're probably going to ask for that, but they're not going to be doing it. But they're not going to be doing it anyway. They've had it. They've had it. Now, maybe someday in the future we'll want that. But I've asked Marco, do you want to draw, I just asked him the question as we were walking on the stage, do you want to draw up a little agreement for them to sign? Because I think we can get them to sign it. I don't think it's necessary. Marco, do you want to talk about that, please?
Well, Mr. President, I think President Trump has shown a willingness to meet and talk to anybody in the world who's interested in peace. I don't know of any president that's been as willing as he has to meet with anyone and talk about peace. We'd love to have peaceful relations with any country in the world. And so obviously that'll depend on Iran's willingness not just to engage in peace, but to negotiate directly with the United States, not through some third country or fourth country process. But I know of no president, probably in our modern history, that's sought peace more than President Trump has.
Sounds like the door is open, but you're in no rush. Is that right? Sounds like the door is open. But
I'll tell you what, look, we're going to talk to them next week with Iran. We may sign an agreement. I don't know. To me, I don't think it's that necessary. I mean, they had a war, they fought. Now they're going back to their world. I don't care if I have an agreement or not. The only thing we'd be asking for is what we were asking for before about we want no nuclear, but we destroyed the nuclear. In other words, it's destroyed. I said, Iran will not have nuclear. Well, we blew it up. It's blown up to kingdom come. And so I don't feel very strongly about it. If we got a document, wouldn't be bad. We're going to meet with them, actually. We're going to meet with them. Yeah.
Over to you. Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and good morning, and all of you. Thank you for being here. As a follow-up to my comments on Sunday's press conference, I wanted to give you a few updates this morning on something I'm honored to do as a chairman, and that's a chance to get to talk about some of our service members and the incredible things that they do on behalf of our nation. And I apologize ahead of time for the length and the detail. Today I'm going to brief you on a couple things. First, I'm going to talk about our air defenders at Al Udeid in Qatar and their actions on Monday. Then I'm going to walk you through a little bit about the academics that went into the attack against Fordo, the massive ordnance penetrator weapon, and we're going to show a video that highlights the effects that weapon has. Of course, nobody was down inside the target, so we don't have video from the target. First, on Monday. As the President has stated, on Monday morning we began to receive indications and warnings that Iran intended to attack U.S. bases in the region. That morning, building on the work that CENTCOM Commander Eric Kurilla had done, and on the orders of the President, at Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar and around the region, we assumed a minimum force posture. Most folks had moved off the base to extend the security perimeter out away from what we assessed might be a target zone, except for a very few Army soldiers at Al Udeid. At that point, only 2 Patriot batteries remained on base, roughly 44 American soldiers responsible for defending the entire base, to include CENTCOM's forward headquarters in the Middle East, an entire air base, and all the U.S. forces there. The oldest soldier was a 28-year-old captain. The youngest was a 21-year-old private who'd been in the military for less than 2 years. So let's put ourselves out there for a second. Imagine you're that young first lieutenant, you're 25 or 26 years old, and you've been assigned as the tactical director inside the command and control element. You, at that age, are the sole person responsible to defend this base. Listening next to you is your early warning operator whose job is to notify you of imminent attack. There's 5 people inside a vehicle and 5 people outside of a vehicle around these, a total of, as I said, 44. By the way, you've sat in the Middle East for years, deployed over and over again, extended multiple times, always being prepared, but unsure of when that particular day will come that you must execute your mission and not fail at doing it. In this case, these Patriot crews were deployed from Korea and Japan as part of our U.S. forces there to ensure that we had the most capable missiles in the CENTCOM area of responsibility. As the day continues, you start to hear more and more chatter in the information space about a pending attack. And as the sun starts to set in the west, you get orders from your higher headquarters to make sure that your missile batteries are pointed to the north. There are just a few other teammates. It's hot, you're getting nervous, and you expect an attack. Outside of those Patriot vehicles, your hot crew, which is 1 NCO and 4 additional soldiers, turns a key and relinquishes control of those missiles to that young lieutenant inside the vehicle, and you wait. You know that you're going to have approximately 2 minutes, 120 seconds to either succeed or fail. And then at approximately 12:30 p.m. on Monday, that's 7:30 p.m. in Qatar, as the sun sets in the west, Iran attacks. As the targets were detected, round after round of Patriot missiles are ejected from their canisters by an initial launch charge. Then the main solid rocket motor ignites. You can feel this in your body if you've ever been around a Patriot taking a shot. And round after round goes out and guides against those missiles coming inbound. We believe that this is the largest single Patriot engagement in U.S. military history. And we were joined in this engagement by the Qatari Patriot crews. I'm not going to tell you how many rounds were shot, but it was a bunch because of classified purposes. And we're aware that there's reports of something getting through. What we do know is there was a lot of metal flying around. Between attacking missiles being hit by Patriots, boosters from attacking missiles being hit by Patriots, the Patriots themselves flying around, and the debris from those Patriots hitting the ground, there was a lot of metal flying around. And yet our U.S. air defenders had only seconds to make complex decisions with strategic impact. These awesome humans, along with their Qatari brothers and sisters in arms, stood between a salvo of Iranian missiles and the safety of Al Udeid. They are the unsung heroes of the 21st century United States Army. And I know a lot of you have seen the videos online and the excitement as those Patriots departed their launchers and went up and guided. This really demonstrates the combat capability and capacity of our Army air defenders. Simply stated, they absolutely crushed it. If you'd flip this over, thanks. Let me next move to a walkthrough of the GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator weapon and share a little bit about the planners who did this and their work on the weapon. First, let me set the stage for you. There's an organization in the U.S. called the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, DTRA. DTRA does a lot of things for our nation, but DTRA is the world's leading expert on deeply buried underground targets. In 2009, a Defense Threat Reduction Agency officer was brought into a vault at an undisclosed location and briefed on something going on in Iran. For security purposes, I'm not going to share his name. He was shown some photos and some highly classified intelligence of what looked like a major construction project in the mountains of Iran. He was tasked to study this facility, work with the intelligence community to understand it, and he was soon joined by an additional teammate. For more than 15 years, this officer and his teammate lived and breathed this single target, Fordo, a critical element of Iran's covert nuclear weapons program. He studied the geology. He watched the Iranians dig it out. He watched the construction, the weather, the discard material, the geology, the construction materials, where the materials came from. He looked at the vent shaft, the exhaust shaft, the electrical systems, the environmental control systems, every nook, every crater, every piece of equipment going in and every piece of equipment going out. They literally dreamed about this target at night when they slept. They thought about it driving back and forth to work, and they knew from the very first days what this was for. You do not build a multi-layered underground bunker complex with centrifuges and other equipment in a mountain for any peaceful purpose. They weren't able to discuss this with their family, their wives, their kids, their friends, but they just kept grinding it out. And along the way, they realized we did not have a weapon that could adequately strike and kill this target. So they began a journey to work with industry and other tacticians to develop the GBU-57. They tested it over and over again, tried different options, tried more after that. They accomplished hundreds of test shots and dropped many full-scale weapons against extremely realistic targets for a single purpose: kill this target at the time and place of our nation's choosing. And then, on a day in June of 2025, more than 15 years after they started their life's work, the phone rang and the President of the United States ordered the B-2 force that you've supported to go strike and kill this target. Yesterday, I had the incredible honor and privilege of spending time with these two Defense Threat Reduction Agency officers who've given so much. One of them said, quote, "I can't even get my head around this. My heart is so filled with the pride of being a part of this team. I am so honored to be a part of this." To you both, thank you, and thank you to your families. Operation Midnight Hammer was the culmination of those 15 years of incredible work. The air crews, the tanker crews, the weapons crews that built the weapons, the load crews that loaded it. Before I run through this video today, I want to talk a little bit about weaponeering and what goes into an attack. Weaponeering is the science of evaluating a target. I mentioned all of those factors before that these two DTRA officers had thought about. Ultimately, weaponeering is determining the right weapon and fuse combination to achieve the desired effects and maximum destruction against a target. In the case of Fordo, the DTRA team understood with a high degree of confidence the elements of the target required to kill its functions, and the weapons were designed, planned, and delivered to ensure that they achieve the effects in the mission space. By the way, in the beginning of its development, we had so many PhDs working on the MOP program, doing modeling and simulation, that we were quietly and in a secret way the biggest users of supercomputer hours within the United States of America. So let me talk about the graphic a little bit. And the GBU-57, which all of you I know is a 30,000 pound weapon dropped only by the B-2. It's comprised of steel, explosive, and a fuse, programmed bespokely each weapon to achieve a particular effect inside the target. Each weapon had a unique desired impact angle, arrival, final heading, and a fuse setting. The fuse is effectively what tells the bomb when to function. A longer delay in a fuse, the deeper the weapon will penetrate and drive into the target. So on Fordo, in June of 2008, you can see these three holes. Depicted here is the main exhaust shaft with two additional ventilation shafts on either side. The United States decided to strike these two ventilation shafts, seen here on the main graphic, as the primary point of entry into the mission space. In the days preceding the attack against Fordo, the Iranians attempted to cover the shafts with concrete to try to prevent an attack. I won't share the specific dimensions of the concrete cap, but you should know that we know what the dimensions of those concrete caps were. The planners had to account for this. They accounted for everything. The cap was forcibly removed by the first weapon, and the main shaft was uncovered. Weapons 2, 3, 4, 5 were tasked to enter the main shaft, move down into the complex at greater than 1,000 feet per second, and explode in the mission space. Weapon number 6 was designed on each side, so there were 6 on each side. Weapons number 6 was designed as a flex weapon to allow us to cover if one of the preceding jets or one of the preceding weapons did not work. The video I'm about to show you is a culmination of over 15 years of development and testing. As I said, hundreds of test shots on various models. This is one weapon. So if you take a view of this as 5 additionals, you'll get a sense of what this looks like. Hopefully you can see it and there's not too much reflection. Tom runs our videos out there. We'll run it at full speed so you can see it and then go back through it. Go ahead, Tom. Keep it going for a minute. You'll see inside the mission space. Unlike a normal surface bomb, you won't see an impact crater because they're designed to deeply bury and then function. I know there's been a lot of questions about that. All 6 weapons at each vent at Fordo went exactly where they were intended to go. A bomb has 3 effects that causes damage: blast, fragmentation, and overpressure. In this case, the primary kill mechanism in the mission space was a mix of overpressure and blast, ripping through the open tunnels and destroying critical hardware. The majority of the damage we assessed based on our extensive modeling was a blast layer combined with the impulse extending from the shock. Imagine what this looks like 6 times over. A point that I want to make here: the Joint Force does not do BDA. By design, we don't grade our own homework. The intelligence community does. But here's what we know following the attacks and the strikes on Fordo. First, that the weapons were built, tested, and loaded properly. 2, the weapons were released on speed and on parameters. 3, the weapons all guided to their intended targets and to their intended aim points. 4, the weapons functioned as designed, meaning they exploded. And we know this through other means, intelligence means that we have, that were visibly, we were visibly able to see them. And we know that the trailing jets saw the first weapons function, and the pilots stated, quote, "This was the brightest explosion that I've ever seen. It literally looked like daylight." Let me now turn to the bomber crews themselves, give you a few details about them. The crews that attacked Fordo were from the active duty Air Force and the Missouri Air National Guard. The crews ranked from captain to colonel, and most were graduates of the Air Force Weapons School headquartered at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada. I will state for the record that there is no beach volleyball or football at the Air Force Weapons School. They were male and female aviators on this mission, and a crew member told me when I talked to them on video the other day that this felt like the Super Bowl, the thousands of scientists, airmen, and maintainers all coming together. One last story about people. When the crews went to work on Friday, they kissed their loved ones goodbye, not knowing when or if they'd be home. Late on Saturday night, their families became aware of what was happening. And on Sunday, when those jets returned from Whiteman, their families were there. Flags flying and tears flowing. I have chills literally talking about this. The jets rejoined into a formation of 4 airplanes followed by a formation of 3 and came up overhead Whiteman proudly in the traffic pattern, pitching out to land right over the base and landing to the incredible cheers of their families who sacrifice and serve right alongside their family members. Like I said, there were a lot of flags and a lot of tears. One commander told me this is a moment in the lives of our families that they will never forget. That, my friends, is what America's Joint Force does. We think, we develop, we train, we rehearse, we test, we evaluate every single day. And when the call comes to deliver, we do so. I could not be more proud standing up here today of our joint force. I'm filled with gratitude that I get to tell their story. And as we stand here right now, our forces remain on a high state of readiness in the region, prepared to defend themselves. And one last thing, our adversaries around the world should know that there are other DTRA team members out there studying targets for the same amount of time, and will continue to do so. Thank you very much. I apologize for the length. I look forward to your
CIA can confirm that a body of credible intelligence indicates, it also goes on to say, new intelligence from historically reliable and accurate sources and methods. Now, you can imagine the CIA director is going to be very careful about how he articulates things of that sensitivity. Classified, secret, top secret, compartmentalized. He's going to know things that you're not going to know, that the press isn't going to know, and he's reflecting that the sources he's seeing are highly credible. They've given credible intelligence. They or those processes have given credible intelligence in the past, and that's what he's basing it on.
You think we need to see that?
Do you have a top secret clearance, sir?
Eventually,
okay.
The American public wants to see it.
Yes.
Yeah, you. I wanted to ask briefly just.
No, not you. Checkered shirt.
Oh, so Mike Glenn with the Washington Times.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, sir. Anybody who's ever read a Battalion S2 report after a fight knows that it's usually, the initial report is usually wrong, sometimes grossly so. Has what happened in this incident caused you all to sort of rethink the intelligence process or the dissemination, or do you think it's just a matter, if the process itself doesn't require any more adjustment?
Well, I can tell you what the chairman told me in the Situation Room and reminded us all, which is alongside what you just said, sir, is that the first reports are almost always wrong. They're almost always incomplete, right? Anything, whether it's a squad level operation or a strategic level operation, the initial reflections you get are coming at you at a high rate of speed from a lot of different sources. So your job is to step back and assess them. And that's why we're urging caution about premising entire stories on biased leaks to biased publications trying to make something look bad. How about we take a beat, recognize first the success of our warriors, hold them up, tell their stories, celebrate that, wave an American flag, be proud of what we accomplished. And in the meantime, I can assure you, the chairman and his staff, the intelligence community, our staff and others are doing all the assessments necessary to make sure that mission was indeed successful. Yes, right there.
Sir, thank you, Mr. Secretary. Iran has recognized that their nuclear program was indeed severely damaged, but they also said that the U.S. strikes only strengthened their ability and their determination to complete their nuclear program. How do you respond to that, sir? Is that a provocation from Iran?
Well, I would say Iran's going to have to say a lot of things right now in order to bolster their image, especially internally. You know, in the media, there's a lot of things they'll say for domestic consumption. But we're watching very closely what they do. Again, that's the intel community. Our job as the chairman, the chairman laid it out so beautifully. Our job is to be prepared. And how proud are you? How proud am I? I didn't know the full story of those men and women 15 years ago who've been pointing at that target. That makes me proud to be an American. That's an awesome story. I hope we can tell more aspects of that in an unclassified way in the future. That's a great thing to know. Our job is to be prepared when the commander-in-chief calls based on those assessments. So, of course, our IC, the Intelligence Committee, will keep watching what Iran does and pay attention to that. But the president has created the contours, the opportunity for a deal, for peace, in something that the world said was intractable, that wasn't possible. And we got that peace, that ceasefire, that option, because of strength, because of his willingness to use American military might that no one else on the planet can do, with the kind of planners and operators that the chairman just laid out.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell us, were you satisfied with the briefing?
Yeah, let me give you some thoughts about what just transpired in there this morning. We talked about how historic and fateful these moments are. This is a historic time that we live in, and this has been an incredible 2 weeks. Of course, it began with Israel's strikes that were targeted against Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile programs. They eliminated nearly the entire top echelon of Iran's military command and nuclear scientists. And then, of course, this past weekend, the United States acted as we needed to act. And we had our military forces, of course, strike the heart of Iran's nuclear weapons program. We delivered a major setback that resulted then in a feeble face-saving response from Iran, and immediately thereafter a ceasefire agreement. We want to commend President Trump for his decisive and bold leadership and thank our military intelligence and diplomatic professionals for what they've accomplished. It is a true testament to America's leadership and military strength. And I will tell you, I was heartened by the briefing that we just got here and the reaction by all of our colleagues. It was bipartisan. There were Republicans and Democrats there. There was a couple of moments of rousing applause and support for our outstanding, extraordinary military servicemen and women. The pride that we all have as Americans, as the only nation on the face of the planet that is capable of this kind of decisive action. And again, as I said, it takes bold leadership to do so. The briefing today was thorough, I think very helpful for the members. They relayed very important information and answered a lot of the questions that were in the minds of members of the House here, and I know they did the same in the Senate yesterday. So we are blessed to be led by a cabinet of officials who are so good at their jobs, to have the acumen of an extraordinary chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Kane, and all of the personnel that work there at the Pentagon and in the U.S. military. I'm very proud to be an American today. I think everyone should be. And what I will say next and what we expect, and one of the things that was discussed this morning, is that we now need Iran to engage with us in direct, good faith talks, negotiations, not through third parties, not through other countries. They need to sit down at the table with us and ensure that this peace is truly lasting. We're on the verge of a real peace in the Middle East for the first time in a long time. And that's because of the decisive leadership of the United States. Everyone around the world understands that. The President got a fantastic reception, as you know, at the NATO meeting, at the summit. And it is so encouraging to us that for the first time now, the other countries, NATO partners, are agreeing to commit 5% of their GDP to the fund to defend the peace around the world. The American people, American taxpayers cannot be leaned upon to carry everyone else any longer. We have to have and pursue an America First policy, and that means what is in America's interest. Of course, what has been done here was not just in America's interest, but in the interest of all peace-loving and people and free people around the world. So I have a couple of my great colleagues, our Majority Leader Steve Scalise here, and Brian Mast, who is the chair of one of our most important committees, our Foreign Affairs Committee. And if you want to have a few questions, I'm sure we can answer those.
You called this a major setback for Iran's nuclear capabilities. Do you have a sense on how much uranium may have survived or how much was destroyed? What are you learning about that?
We have a sense about that. Some of this is classified, but I will tell you that there was a CIA press release, I think it went out yesterday, and they concluded that, Iran, this is a quote, Iran's nuclear program has been severely damaged, unquote. I'll put that in layman's terms. I would say it's a substantial setback, and that was a first-hand, authoritative, and reliable account. That differs greatly from the low-confidence preliminary assessment that was leaked, sadly and dangerously, probably from this body, and we're going to get down to the bottom of that. But you can dismiss the low-level initial assessment, and you can rely upon what the CIA has said, because these are first-hand accounts. It is clear, everyone can see by the videos, that these massive ordnance penetrating bombs did the job. And I think their key facilities have been disabled, and I think Iran is now a long time away from doing what they might have done before this very successful operation.
Do you have any of the potential for any restrikes?
whole?
I'm not sure how much of that's classified, and I shouldn't be getting into that today. But we are very encouraged about the situation and where it stands. We're very encouraged. I think the greatest evidence that we have of the effectiveness of this mission was that Iran came immediately and was willing to engage in a ceasefire agreement. That would have been unthinkable just a few weeks back. So it's a very good thing for the whole world.
On the topic of the... Do you believe that the president needs to strike a deal with Iran and have something in writing here moving forward?
Well, look, I think that's the next logical step. I mean, we will do what is necessary to maintain the peace, but it is in Iran's interest and, of course, in the world's interest for them to come to the table in good faith and make an agreement. That would be good for the entire region. We have peace in the Middle East, and that is a big step towards peace around the globe.
On the big beautiful bill, has the Senate, have you talked to the Senate yet on when they will hold their vote and when the House will get a chance?
I was in the Oval Office with Leader Thune as recently as early evening yesterday with the President. We had a long discussion about this and where the bill stands in its status, and we are very, very close. And Leader Thune has confidence that they could get the job done by this weekend, and we certainly are hopeful for that. We would still like to meet that July 4th self-imposed deadline, and the President likes that idea. I certainly like that idea, and so does Leader Thune. So we're in a wait-and-see posture in the House right here, and we'll see what happens. So we're ready to act.
Comfortable with the Islamophobic sort of tropes that some of your members are using?
Thanks, guys.
Very well. We always have gotten along. You're going to have to say that again because you're being blurred out.
Iran wants to have the UN force the U.S. to pay for the damages that were done by the strike that the U.S. did.
I think it's pretty ridiculous, yeah. I would say maybe very ridiculous. Go ahead, please.
Mr. President, Putin has not agreed to a ceasefire. Do you think he's mocking it?
No, I don't think he is. I think he's worried about sanctions. I do think he's very worried about sanctions. And, you know, we're determining that the Senate, as you know, has put in big sanctions, very big sanctions.
See Patriot missiles go into Ukraine?
Well, they need them for defense. I mean, I don't want to see people killed, and they're going to need them for defense. They're amazingly effective. You know, we knocked out 14 out of 14. That's pretty amazing. If you think of it, it's almost incredible. But we knocked out 14 out of 14, so they're going to need something because they're being hit pretty hard.
Are you going to send them, though? Are you going to send more?
Yeah, we might. We're looking at it.
So-called enemies were watching. They watched every minute of it. They watched. There was very few people that weren't watching, actually, but they watched every minute. It was a perfect military performance, the likes of which we haven't seen in a long time. I mean, if you compare that to the same country, the hostages from years ago, Jimmy Carter, it was unfortunate for Jimmy Carter. He was a nice man, but with the helicopters going down, the sandstorms, the prisoners, they get captured, then the election and the prisoners and Reagan and all the problems. It was nothing but problems. And that was a failure. And ours was not only the pilots. I mean, those machines flew for 37 straight hours. They didn't stop. They went skedaddle. You know the word skedaddle? It means skedaddle. They dropped the bombs, and somebody said, skedaddle. Let's get the hell out of here. And every bomb hit its mark and hit it incredibly. And as you know, the Atomic Energy Commission said it's gone. That place is gone. We had a lot of fake reporting, mostly from CNN, where the scammer writer, a writer for CNN, who should be fired, by the way. She was involved with the 51 fake intelligence agents, if you remember that. She did that story, created a story out of it. She created a story out of the laptop from hell, saying it came from Russia, but it actually came from Hunter Biden's bedroom, or worse. Just a scammer, and she's still at CNN, which is pretty amazing. But we'll ask you a question about her. But they came up with this concept that maybe the attack wasn't that good. Maybe it, and I saw it happen right after the attack. I saw this person on CNN. I like to watch the enemy. You learn from the enemy. And I watch because you have to know where they're coming from. And I watched her say, Anderson, you know, I'm hearing stories that maybe they didn't hit their target, maybe it wasn't that good a hit. And they were hearing stories. The next day it was a little more, and the next day a little more. After 3-4 days, she was saying, you know, I don't know. I don't think it was that. Except by that time everybody knew it was hit perfectly. The evidence is in the planes. The evidence the pilots are their best evidence. But they actually came out of their plane because they were here the other day and they said, it was so sad. We did such a good job. We flew into very dangerous airspace. I'll never forget, we were in the Situation Room and they said they have entered Iranian airspace, and everyone took a deep breath because they had more missiles pointed at them, but the equipment is so good, it's stealth, way up in the air, and it was stealth, and they went right through that, and they sort of, by the time they found out they were there, they were already gone. That was the word skedaddle, get the hell out of here. But they were right in the most dangerous airspace in the world, and they took those big, beautiful, very fast, they're unbelievable planes. I mean, they become really beautiful works of art. You know, I always thought they sort of were cool, but now they look better than just cool, don't they, huh? But they dropped the loads, and literally they would hit, if you look at this table, from here to there, they had a half a refrigerator door is the way to best explain it. Take a refrigerator door, average size, cut it in half. That was their target. They hit every single one. Then we had 30 missiles, Tomahawk, shot from submarines 300 miles away. Every one of them hit their target. It was a perfect mission. Then they came back, almost 37 hours. Every plane worked perfectly. The mechanics were here too. I said, you got to get the mechanics here. We didn't have any problems. If you remember, they had a lot of problems with the helicopters, but they did fly through a dust storm, which they shouldn't have done. Sometimes you say, let's go back and try it on a nicer day. Dust and sand don't work well with helicopters if you know much about helicopters, but that was a horrible embarrassment to us. This is now a very exciting time for Israel and for the entire Middle East, because all across the Middle East, the forces of chaos, terror, and ruin that have plagued the region for decades now stand weakened, isolated, and totally defeated. A new coalition of proud and responsible nations is emerging, and because of us, the enemies of all civilization are in retreat. Thanks to the bravery and incredible skill of the Israeli Defense Forces and Operation Rising Lion, guy's central casting. Let's put him in a movie. Look at him. Great job. And my people loved working with you. Loved it. They worked so well together. But many of Iran's top terrorists, including nuclear scientists and commanders, have been extinguished from this earth. And with Operation Midnight Hammer, boy, that's a great name for that, what we did. Last June, the United States military flew 7 of those beautiful B-2 bombers. They look so beautiful all of a sudden. They were always, I thought they were pretty planes. I had no idea they could do what they did. In fact, we just ordered 28 more of them. A little updated version. We ordered a whole pile of them. And almost 100 other planes went with them, including fighter jets. We had 52 tankers, big, beautiful, brand new tankers that were loading them up 4 or 5 times. They've traveled 37 hours back and forth, think of that. But we had tankers all over the sky for all the other planes. We had the F-22s, the F-35s, F-16s. We had a hell of a lot of planes. So we had 52 gas stations in the sky. That's what they call them. I'll tell you, I wouldn't want to be flying one of them. We have our great General Raisin Cane right here. General, stand up. This guy. What a general. Thank you. I asked General Kane, I said, you know, we're having problems with ISIS, and I was in Washington, and I asked, how long would it take to defeat ISIS? And my Washington generals told me, 3, 4, maybe 5 years, sir. I said, I don't get it. We've got the best equipment in the world. Why? So I flew to Iraq, and I met with a man named Kane. He said, what's your first name? He said, they call me Raisin, sir. I said, wait a minute, your name is Raisin Kane? I've been looking for you for a long time. You gotta be kidding. So they told me 3, 4, 5 years to defeat ISIS. And I sit down with him and I say, why is it? I flew there in the dark of night. I landed, I'll never forget it. It's quite a trip. I'm glad I made it because I met him. I said, could I ask you, General? I come down. He's standing with another general and a sergeant. Everybody was like central casting. They could go into a movie right now. Between him and you guys over here, we could get rich making movies, okay? And they got along so great. That's the beautiful thing, that your military and our military, Bibi, got along so great. But I was told by the television generals in Washington, we have the best equipment in the world. Why is it taking so long? And they said, 4 years. I said, so let me ask you, Raisin, how long would it take you to defeat ISIS? Sir, we can do it in 3 weeks, but you'll probably have some time left over. I said, you gotta be kidding. What the hell are you talking about? They said 4 years. I said, well, sir, look, it's not my place to say, but you're asking me the question. What you have to do is you hit them from the west, you hit them from the north, you hit them from the south, you hit them above, you hit them below. I said, so why didn't they do it? And he didn't want to speak badly of his superiors, which is hard to believe they were his superiors. Should have been the other way around a long time ago, because he's the one that did Operation Hammer. It was flawless. It was flawless. It was absolutely flawless. And I said, so you really think you can do it in 4 weeks? Yes, sir, 100%. You have to do it differently than they were doing it. They were using one base, and it was hundreds of miles away. And he says, we have all these portable bases all over the Middle East. And they didn't want to use them because they didn't want to offend the country where the portable, they wouldn't have even known what the hell the planes were going up, right? They wouldn't have known, but he said, no, they didn't want to defend anybody, offend anybody, and but we can do it in 4 weeks. I said, you sure about that? I'm going to call you back. I'll call you back on Monday. I'm going back to Washington. But you think 4 weeks? Yes, sir, I think we can do it in 4 weeks. We'll have time left over. So I call him on Monday. I say, you think you can do it? 4 weeks. I said, go ahead and do it. He did it. I'll tell you, he did it in 4 weeks, less than 4 weeks. So, General, stand up, please. Again, this is a real general. This is not a television general. He doesn't want to go on television. He doesn't want to go on television. I said the other guys love being on television. So we dropped 14 bombs on Iran's key nuclear facilities, totally, as I said originally, obliterating them. And that's been confirmed, and everybody understands it. Together we stopped the #1 state sponsor of terror from obtaining the world's most dangerous weapons. And if you think about it, if we didn't do that, and assuming we made the same deal that we have today, there'd be a dark cloud over this deal. And #1, it wouldn't happen because the other Arab and Muslim nations really wouldn't feel comfortable making the deal that we have now, right? If Iran had that nuclear weapon that they were about 2 months away from having. They would have had it in 2 months or maybe less than that. They were right at, this was our last shot. They looked at it for 22 years. This was our last shot. The pilots told me that. They said, 22 years, sir. They looked at it. Our predecessors looked, they studied it. 3 times a year would do drills on that exact attack. And boy, did they get it right. But let's assume they didn't, and let's assume there was large-scale nuclear weapons in the hands of Iran. we couldn't be here today. Even if we signed the deal, which we couldn't do because a lot of people would not want to have anything to do with it, we took a big cloud off of the Middle East and off of Israel. And it was my honor to help. But isn't it true, though, that can you imagine the same, let's assume, Bibi, the same documents, we had everything the same, but you had somebody out there that was, in the opinion of everybody, all-powerful in the Middle East. They took a big hit, didn't they? Didn't they take a big hit? Boy, oh boy. They got hit from one side, from the other. And you know, it would be great if we could make a peace deal with them. And I think that's maybe, would you be happy with that? Wouldn't it be nice, I think? Because I think they want to. I think they're tired. Somebody said, sir, they're starting their nuclear program again. I said, let me tell you something. They're not starting anything. They want to survive. The last thing they want to do is start digging holes again in mountains that just got blown up and start. They're not doing this. They want to survive, okay? But I think we have a chance. Steve, you, and I think Jared, come on, I'll call you back for another one. We always bring Jared when we want to get that deal closed. We bring Jared, but Steve, you and Jared and the General and Pete and Marco, you'll get that deal done easy. I think that'll be easy. But first we have to get Russia done. We got to get that one done. If you don't mind, Steve, let's focus on Russia first, all right? Stronger and more powerful than it's ever been before. We've had good relationships and frankly not good. You didn't have a good relationship with Barack Hussein Obama. You didn't have a good relationship with sleepy Joe Biden. But you had a great relationship with me, and now it's as good as it was, and probably even better if you think about it, because we took the dark cloud away from your country. It was called Iran and its nuclear capability, and we obliterated that very quickly and strongly and powerfully. But that was a real cloud over the whole Middle East, and now they want to make a deal. They want to make a deal. They want to see if they can work out a deal with us, and we'll be doing that probably. But that was a terrible cloud that you had to live with for a long time. 22 years they were thinking about doing that, the B-2s. That was even before the B-2s. Those B-2s, what machines they were, they flew in, they were undetectable, and they dropped their payload, and every single bomb hit its exact mark, which was a shaft going deep into the mountain. And every single one of them hit, and it was total obliteration. And then I was criticized by some of the fake news for saying the word obliteration was too strong, perhaps. They had no idea. Nobody saw it. 3 days later, when the Atomic Energy Commission went, they said it was total obliteration, beyond obliteration, they said. But they want to make a deal. We'll see what happens. This week, our country's all